We're just trying to get some more chairs. So just a couple of minutes, please. Good evening, members, officers, members of the public, and people watching us at home. And welcome you to the planning meeting. Can I ask everybody to put the phones on silent, please? I do mine as well. Right. Apologies for absence. That's the first item. Bill?
Apology for absence from Councillor Madiha Hassim
Thank you. Any more?
and Councillor Nagra.
Okay. Thank you. Any more? No, I think we are all in. Excellent. Item 2, declaration of interest under the planning law. I had loads of emails and phone calls. I think we all had. Yeah. Councillor John Stroud?
Yeah, exactly, sir.
Everybody? Okay, we all had.
Chair.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on, Dan.
As well as the many emails, I've also spoken with Councillor Junior Mir about this, affects his residents, and Councillor Aftab Siddiqui.
Same here. I've spoken with Councillor Siddiqui and a couple of other members.
Chair.
Yep.
I've had emails, but this application neighbours my ward, and I've met with residents over the last 6 months on this application.
Thank you. I also had on the next item, item 5, emails and phone calls from the head teachers. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, item 3, minutes from the last meeting, 5th of September. That's page 7 to 9. I'll take both accuracy and matter rising together. Anything? Yeah. Councillor Sidhu?
I wasn't here for that meeting.
You weren't here?
No, but you got me on there that I was.
Okay, we'll correct that. Councillor Put? Yeah? Okay, we all agreed? Thank you. Where are the minutes? Open it. Can you open this for me? It's stuck. That's it. There we go, sir. Right. Next item is item 4. That is a land rear of Hounslow Conservative Club, Gresham Road. I think who's taken? Taken?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors and members of the public. Before I begin my presentation, I have a short verbal addendum to make, if possible. Today, the council received notice of a second online petition. This petition has 275 online signatures, and the key concerns outlined within the front page are poor quality and incoherent design, a loss of local open space, increase in local parking stress through insufficient number of parking spaces, lack of consultation, harm to heritage assets, harm to local wildlife and biodiversity, and overdevelopment of the wider area. Now, these concerns were already raised by many other residents in the consultation period, and the planning department feels we've addressed these concerns within both the committee and addendum reports. So this application is for the land to the rear of Hounslow Conservative Club on Gresham Road. On the screen now is the location plan, which shows the extent of the site and the wider context. The application is for the redevelopment of the site to create 3 4-story blocks comprised of 56 dwellings, of which 16 would be affordable, with 18 parking spaces, 1,597 square meters of communal amenity space, including 340 square meters of play space. The subject site is a 0.7 hectare parcel of land formerly used as tennis courts and is directly to the east of the Hounslow Conservative Club, which is not open to the public. The images on the screen now show the existing site plan as well as an aerial image of the site within the wider context. The adopted local plan designates this site as local open space. However, the site was identified as surplus to requirements in our 2018 draft open space assessment, and the emerging local plan review intends to allocate this site for residential development. This emergent allocation is considered to have moderate weight in a determination of this application due to its relatively advanced stage undergoing Regulation 19 consultation. Running along the northern boundary of the site, as you can see on the screen, up on higher ground of around 2 to 3 meters above the subject site, is the Great West Road. To the east of the site, running the entire length of the boundary, is a Piccadilly Underground line with Osterley Station, which is Grade 2 listed approximately 90 meters to the northwest. The Hounslow Conservative Club, directly to the west of the site, and shares vehicular access with the subject site as well as Oakland School. The road branches off from that with the school and runs along the southern side of the HCC, heading east towards the subject site. There is existing set of vehicular and pedestrian access gates set back 14 meters from Great West Road, followed by another set of vehicle and pedestrian gates along the branch access to the road, as shown on the screen above. On the screen now is the HCC itself, and this is the parking area that separates the main building of the HCC with the subject site. The vans shown on the image on the screen are outside of the site's red line boundary. Directly on the screen now is a picture of the subject site in its current state. This is the area of hard standing. It's seen to be overgrown, and as mentioned, it isn't currently open to the public. The southern boundary of the site with Oakland School is a relatively exposed boundary along the entire width. The proposal would include a revised boundary treatment consisting of hedgerows and trees, as shown on the plan on the screen. Concerns have been raised by the school over the use of the existing 1.5 meter boundary treatment, which they believe should be increased in height, and that the council will secure this via condition. Concerns have also been raised by the school as well as the users of the HCC regarding the impact on vulnerable children and the users of the HCC through the construction process. And I will set out the planning department's position on this shortly. On the screen now is another image of Oakland School. And here is an image of Great West Road with the properties Penwaris Court and West Court on the other side of the street. No neighbours, the northern neighbours would not be impacted by this development, and no other residential properties would be either. Therefore, the proposal would avoid harm to the living conditions of any residential neighbours. The properties to the north are over 60 meters from the site, and as you can see, there's a dense row of hedgerow on both their side of the road and this side of the street. So there's a very obscured and limited view of the subject site from the north on the opposite side of the street. For the consultations, 283 neighbouring properties were notified by way of letter, and an independent consultation event was organised by the agent acting on behalf of the applicant. This consultation event was held on the 23rd of July this year between the hours of 6 and 9 in the evening. Representatives from the applicant as well as the council were also present to discuss concerns with residents who were present. Overall, 123 representations have been received, including one today, which objected the proposal, and these comments are summarised within my report. The council also received a formal petition with 184 signatures, which raised concerns with the application. And as of this morning, an online version of this petition had 542 signatures. The headline paragraph of the petition is also set out within my report. On the 2nd of October, the council also received a representation from ET Planning on behalf of the users of the HCC and objected to the proposal on the following grounds: the loss of community facilities, inadequate parking, the height of the building in relation to surrounding properties, the access arrangements, private amenity standards, and potential lack of privacy for future residents within the development, and the daylight and sunlight levels that would be received by future occupiers. Oakland School have also commented on the application, and their concerns relate to a lack of parking and congestion at peak times, security and safety for the school, construction issues including noise, dust, construction, traffic and safety, and daylight and sunlight and privacy and overlooking. The proposed site plan is shown on the screen at the moment. It comprised 3 4-storey blocks with 56 dwellings. As mentioned, it is allocated as local open space within the current local plan, and the council's emergent local plan intends to allocate this for residential development. Therefore, the loss of open space in this location would satisfy the criteria of the MPPF. In addition, whilst this site would no longer be used as local open space, the proposal would include over 1,500 square meters of high quality communal amenity space, which would be available to the wider public. Given the long-standing existing use of the site, which appears to have been restricted from the wider public for some time now, the proposal would benefit the designation of local open space by improving the quality and function of the site, whilst also bringing the site back into active use. The 16 affordable dwellings that the proposal would include, which is considered to represent the maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing that could be provided on the site, would be located on Block A, which is the left-hand side block on the screen at the moment. On the screen now is the proposed access plan to the site. The access for the development would be facilitated via both Gresham Road and the Great West Road. The existing vehicular access to the site via Gresham Road would be retained and improved by increasing the width to 4.1 meters and would remain the sole vehicular access point to the site. 2 additional pedestrian points would also be added to the boundary with the Great West Road for a total of 3 pedestrian access points as shown on the screen. These plans show the general layout of the ground floor plan, and these plans for the 1st to 3rd floors. The internal standard of accommodation is considered to be of a high quality. All dwellings will comply with the NDSS and will benefit from amenity space that either complies with or exceeds the requirements of local plan policy SC5. All proposed habitable rooms have also been assessed against the BRE guidelines for daylight and sunlight. For daylight, all 56 rooms within Block A exceed the BRE guidelines, and for Blocks B and C, 52 out of 56 rooms would exceed the BRE guidelines, so 4 rooms in each block falling short. The rooms that do fall short belong to living kitchen diners, and there is justification that these, in conjunction with the balconies that are there, which do block out quite a bit of light from there. The Housing Design Standards LPG acknowledges this as a typical trade-off, and the occupants of this flat would still enjoy good levels of daylight within their internal and external spaces. The bedrooms that serve the living kitchen diners, which fall short, also exceed the BRE recommendation. So overall, there is a very good quality of daylight amenity for future occupiers. The overshadowing assessment presented in the daylight and sunlight report also shows that 90% of the communal ground floor open space would see in excess of 2 hours daylight sunlight on the spring equinox, which far exceeds the 50% recommendation. And overall, 95% of the rooms and 96% of all dwellings would exceed the BRE's recommendations and will see excellent levels of natural light, which is considered to be acceptable. The proposed habitable rooms within the development would be at a distance of 17.5 meters, whilst this distance is marginally short of the recommended 18 meters, given the difference of 0.5 meter and having regard to the flexibility that the housing SPG affords, this distance is considered to be an appropriate residential relationship. In terms of the communal amenity space, the proposal would provide 1,597 square meters, including 340 of play space. Overall, the communal amenity and landscape strategy is considered to be of an extremely high quality and should be considered a benefit of the scheme, particularly as members of the public would be able to make use of this space, thereby bringing the local space back into use. I'm aware that members have been presented with an objection letter from ET Planning that states the council have incorrectly applied policy SC5 in calculating the communal amenity space. I just wanted to provide a comparison, as I appreciate my report was set out in a slightly different format to the letter from ET Planning. On the screen now, we can see on the left-hand side is the objectors' calculations, and on the right-hand side is the planning department's. So you can see that there's some indiscrepancies in terms of the communal amenity space requirements. ET Planning state that the two-bedroom dwellings should have a requirement of 30 square meters for communal amenity space, whereas SC5 states that dwellings up to 3 habitable rooms, which includes two-bedroom dwellings, should have 25 square meters, and likewise dwellings with 4 habitable rooms, which would be the 3-bedroom dwellings, should have 30 square meters of communal amenity space, which brings whereas ET Planning state the requirement is 1,760, planning officers consider it to be 1,480, and there's also the need to deduct the total provision of private amenity space from this requirement, which brings the overall policy requirement down to 1,000 meter once you remove the 480 square meters of private space. Given that over 1,500 square meters is provided, it is clearly well exceeding the policy requirements of SC5. In terms of design, concerns have been raised throughout the determination period regarding the design and massing of the proposed blocks. On the screen now is the proposed elevations for block A and C, and on the screen now is the proposed elevations for block B. The planning department has supported the overall height, massing and layout of the scheme throughout the pre-application and application process, and is considered an appropriate response to the site which would optimize its development capacity. The key design discussions that have taken place throughout the determination period have focused on the character and identity of the blocks, as well as the quality of materials. An amended materials palette for the blocks was received throughout the determination period, with the blocks on the edge of the site changed to a red brick. The overall identity of the blocks has also been improved by refining the levels of detailing within the elevation, and the applicant has provided sufficient information to confirm that the materials to be used in the facade treatment would be of a high quality. On the page now is a street level view from the east on Great West Road looking towards the site. And this is the aerial image of the scheme in its current form. Overall, the design, layout, massing and scale of the scheme is considered to be an appropriate response and would be considered of sufficient quality. In terms of transport, officers are satisfied that the proposal would have an acceptable impact on the local highway network, both in terms of pedestrian and vehicle safety. Vehicle access would remain from Gresham Road, and the road would be widened to 4.1 meters and footpath widened to 2 meters in order to reduce the conflict between vehicles. Swept paths have also been provided to show that construction, emergency and service vehicles could safely maneuver the access road without harming the safety of pedestrians. 18 car parking spaces would be provided on the site, which is considered acceptable given the P Tyler 3 and the proximity to Osterley Station. A contribution will also be sought from a developer to consult and implement a controlled parking zone on Gresham Road, which would ensure that occupiers of the development would not be able to increase the parking stress that's currently experienced by surrounding streets. And a travel plan would also be secured to promote sustainable modes of transport for future occupiers of the development. Now, the key concerns that have been raised throughout this application relate to disturbances during construction to both Oakland School and the users of the HCC. It is certainly acknowledged that there will be a level of disturbance caused during the construction period. However, the council and developer will implement mitigation measures in consultation with the school and the HCC to ensure that disturbances are minimized as much as practically possible. An equalities impact assessment was included within the addendum report, which assessed the impact of the development against the protected characteristics of age, disability, and religion. The EQIA does acknowledge that there would be a moderate adverse impact on the protected equalities groups throughout the construction period. However, mitigation measures set out in the report, including the construction logistics plan, construction environmental management plan, considerate contractor scheme, the modular method of construction, the financial contribution to relocate vulnerable children from within the school, and a contribution towards a controlled parking zone, coupled with the overall planning benefits of the scheme, would ensure that the impact on the protected equalities groups would be suitably and appropriately mitigated and managed as much as practically possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Before I ask question, I've got a couple of questions for you. I know you mentioned the entrance will be widened, but even then, there's a school on one side and the club on one side, a lot of activities going on in the club.
Yeah.
Do you think there'll be sufficient, especially during the construction, or is there any way we can have an extra access somewhere for the construction? Can I give you a second question as well? Or
I'll answer both. I mean, in terms of the second question about a different access point, I think that is out of the question in terms of being able to provide vehicular access from Great West Road, and TfL in their consultation said that any construction activities couldn't, there couldn't be vehicles stopping on Great West Road or anything like that. In terms of the use of the road, so we have received swept paths that show that the vehicles can maneuver that road safely. Now, in terms of the conflict with pedestrians and schools, there are various mitigation measures, such as limiting the hours for construction deliveries to take place. So we'd look to, in consultation with the school, limit construction hours or delivery hours, so that there aren't vehicles coming to and from the site when it is at its busiest in the mornings and for pickup times in the afternoon. So overall, the mitigation measures that could be secured would sufficiently, in my view, overcome any safety concerns between pedestrians and then construction vehicles associated with this development.
Thank you. And very quickly, the other one, my worry is the school. Would the school be overlooked? Because people are there, and that's the last thing we want, anybody looking down into the children's ground play.
Yeah, of course. If I could just go back to the relevant section on this page here, at the bottom of the screen is the northern wing of Oakland School. Now, the rest of the school is sort of set away from the site. There are 19 windows within this block. You can see on the screen, and it may actually be slightly easier to see it on the landscape plan, but there is hedgerows as well as trees to screen views out of and into the school. Coupled with that, the distance of 23.7 meters is considered an appropriate relationship. It wouldn't be oppressive when viewed from those windows. And if it was residential to residential, that exceeds the general requirements of 18 to 21 meters. So that would be an appropriate relationship to avoid any privacy or overlooking concerns.
Thank you. Members, open for questions. Councillor Bowring? Yeah.
Got quite a few questions, Chair. Perhaps I'll do a couple of them and then let others jump in. So the first one was, can you just explain a bit more the difference between the local plan and the emerging local plan and how we give appropriate weight to that? This issue with the amenity space, and are you essentially saying that the consultant got the sums wrong or used the wrong formula? And then the third one, and I'll come back for some more if I can later, Chair. They're sort of saying it's a talking about damage to nature and harm. Could you comment on the biodiversity net gain and the urban greening factor?
Yes, of course. So firstly, in regard the development plan, the adopted local plan in its current form is part of our development plan, and the starting point for our decision making is that plan. So the current local plan has significant weight. It's what we assess all applications against in conjunction with the London plan. However, when policies are emerging, they start to be able to be afforded slightly more weight whenever they go through the consultation period. So at the start of the process, you can't afford weight to these emerging policies because that's what planning policy states. As you get through the examination process, and we're now in Regulation 19 consultation, the advice from our spatial planning team is that can be considered a relatively advanced stage and allows us to apply moderate weight to that. But also, I'd like to caveat that we have previously. Last year withdrew a previous version of our emerging local plan, which was with the inspector being examined. The allocation that's currently in front of us was the same as the allocation that was being reviewed by the inspector at that point, so can be considered to have moderate weight. Then the other points, yeah, I mean, with the communal amenity space, I do believe my calculations are an accurate representation. Apply the figures very, very frequently. So politely, yes, the figures were applied incorrectly by that consultant. And then in terms of the biodiversity net gain, there is a 16% biodiversity net gain. So that does exceed the 10% requirement.
The urban greening factor?
The urban greening factor, I'll just confirm it for you. It's 0.4 something, but I'm not sure. It is compliant with policy. I'll just get the exact figure for you. Yeah, urban greening factor of 0.4. No, sorry, 0.42.
Councillor Bowring, I'll come back to you. Yeah, Councillor John Stroughton.
Thank you very much. Can I just, several areas we need to talk about, but one of them which is coming to the fore through some of the objections is the parking issue as normal. I note that this is 56 dwellings and currently there's 18 car park spaces allocated. For my money, that's too many, but there you go. Will any number of points on this, but will any number of those be disabled parking? Will any number of those be EV only parking? Secondly, the entire area, apart from a small part, seems to be surrounded by CPZs. And you mentioned something about CPZs. If you could just pick up on that. Would we get a guarantee that anyone moving into this development will be denied a resident CPZ badge, which is normal process when moving into a new area? That therefore should alleviate any concerns on parking, i.e. only 16 of them. And when you come to my question on EV and disabled, how many cars that will actually represent, will they be able to park in the adjoining streets, or will that become a CPZ? And finally, I noticed from TfL, whilst we're on transport, that even though it's got a fair bit of public transport access, it has got Ostley within 100 metres?
90 metres.
90
yeah,
metres.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, the Great West Road is reasonably well served by buses as well.
Yes.
And my final bit on transport, bike parking, I couldn't find or didn't hear anything about it.
No problem. I'll start from the first question. So yeah, 18 car parking spaces. 14 spaces will be fitted with an active EV provision. So 14 will have EV charging. Oh no, sorry, 4 active EV charging points.
Will they be limited? Sorry, will they be limited to EV only?
So that may be a possibility, because within one of the recommended conditions is a car parking management plan, which will set out, obviously there isn't one per dwelling, so we need information on who is going to be allocated, whether it's families or people with electric vehicles, so we can get those sorts of details. So yeah, it would be 4 active EV points, the remaining 14 with passive provision. And then for the blue badge spaces, just double checking my report, 3 blue badge spaces. So on the controlled parking zone, the contribution will firstly go towards consulting affected residents as to whether this is something they have an appetite for. So it is by no means a guarantee that it will happen. But if residents on Gresham Road, and at the consultation events, many residents on Gresham Road were there and complaining about the existing levels of parking, let alone future. So it's likely that there would be an appetite for that. Every time I visited the site, I've struggled to get parking. So I'd assume there would be an appetite for that. If a CPZ was implemented, then the Section 106 would ensure that any of the occupiers of this development that don't have a space on the site can't park on that road.
Okay, thank you.
Final one, sorry, bikes.
Oh, yes, sorry. So but cycle storage is spread out throughout the site. On the screen at the moment, you can see it's mainly located in between the blocks and then on the left-hand side of the screen. So there is a policy compliant level of cycle parking spaces. I believe it's 104 spaces overall. Long stay spaces, sorry, whereby 56 would be Sheffield stands, including 6 spaces for larger cycles, and the remaining 48 are 2-tier, and then there would also be 6 short stay spaces.
Thank you very much. So just to summarize, there should be minimal, if any, impact on parking for the current residents, is what I'm hearing.
That's the planning department's position.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Lal?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a multiple number of questions, but I'll limit my questions so others have a chance to ask them as well. So I'll kick off with an easy one first. The ET planning objection, when did you actually receive that?
Yesterday, the 2nd of October.
Okay, right. So you've done a pretty good job turning it around and getting this addendum out.
It's been a hectic day.
Yeah, I imagine it would be, yeah. Okay, so on the parking issue, so 18 vehicles on site, but I'm mindful of the site to the west of that. So will HCC have their own parking provision? Although it's not part of this plan, but I just want to understand how much parking is there in that area.
Yeah, this proposal won't impact any of the parking from the HCC, and I'll just go back to the aerial image of the site, which has the red line boundary. So there are, you can see the red line boundary here, and there are a cluster of vans parked on the HCC on a grass verge. This is outside of the red line boundary. If the HCC wanted to keep those vans in that position, they would be well within their means to do so. So this wouldn't displace those vehicles. As much as I think it may be a shame if they stayed there for future occupiers in terms of visual appearance, that the HCC could keep those there if they wanted to.
Okay, then that's a decision for HCC.
Yep.
All right, okay, that's fine. And will there be any likelihood of joint sharing arrangements with the school in terms of parking provision if there's parking required during the use of HCC at any time in the future? Again, it may not be, if it's not relevant to this application, don't answer it.
Just clarify the question for me, please, Councillor. So would the school be able to use the HCC part, or would the HCC be able to use the school parking?
Yeah, HCC be able to use the school parking.
That would be outside of the realm
Okay,
of this
fine.
application.
Just leave that there. Okay, then going back to the report regarding, again, it's an old chestnut. It comes up time and time again, right? It's about perception and actual funding. So under Section 106 funding from the CCG, they're saying they're going to give us about 51K. And it's always a case where residents tell us there is not enough provision of healthcare, whether it's GP surgeries, etc., or clinics. And I'm just thinking 51K, is that really sufficient? Is there any way we can test this as a council? Because we always accept it from them that this is how much they need, but is it really sufficient?
I believe so. The Hoodoo have the Healthy Urban Development Unit, Hoodoo, they have a standard model, and they calculate what the contribution should be based on the number of homes, the number of people, the tenure. So they have a very robust sort of calculation of how they come to that fee. In terms of it being sufficient, the community infrastructure levy can also be used to go towards infrastructure for health. This contribution isn't the only thing that would impact the local community infrastructure in that regard. So other NHS facilities that feel they need funding following this development could apply through the bid process.
Okay, and Chair, just one last one then, regarding the height and massing of the 3 blocks. I understand they're 4 stories high. Would you be able to just show some more images on there in terms of, because there's some kind of a gradient coming off the Great
Yeah.
West Road. So in reality, when you look from the Great West Road, is it as high as one would imagine?
No, it isn't. I don't unfortunately have a visual here. This one may be the best one. So on the right-hand side, you can see the steps up that go in up the verge. So essentially from street level on the Great West Road, you would only see the very bottom of the first floor. So the ground floor is essentially sunken, and from street level on Great West Road, which is where this building would be most prominent, it would be viewed as 3 stories. Which is broadly consistent with the height of other properties in the area.
Okay, and so then across the railway line, you've got some flats there.
Yeah.
Is it almost in sync with them, or is it slightly higher?
Yeah, there is an image in my report that I appreciate. It's not too clear. The line was very, very faint. I believe it's figure 8 under paragraph 8.65. I did try and play around with the image to try and make it a bit more obvious, but it essentially shows that when viewed from the subject site, the height would be around the same based on the change in site levels. Now, if the 2 buildings were next to each other on the same level, the proposed development would be higher, but due to the sunken ground, they would be roughly the same height.
Okay, so like mitigating a little bit
Councillor,
there. All right, that's fine,
Can
Chair.
I come
Thank you.
back to you?
No, it's
Yeah?
fine, Chair.
That's fine. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Kiani?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know that, how long this time scale of this development. That's the first question. And shall I ask the other question as well now?
The outline CLP states it will be between 18 months to 2 years.
18 months to 2 years. As you know, in my opinion, that Gresham Road is not very wide road, and it's a huge lorries will be coming to utilize that. That will be impacted the HCC and school. So these are the people around on that road. So they will be affected for 18 months. So what consideration you have given to compensate that,
In terms of compensation, the focus is on mitigation and how we can reduce the disturbance that is caused by construction and general construction traffic. So firstly, this is to be an allocated site. So the principle of some form of development should be considered acceptable, and any form of development would generate a level of construction traffic. Now, that being said, all of the various mitigation measures we've mentioned, including getting a construction logistics plan and construction environmental management plan before the start of construction, we would be able to see all of the vehicle routes that were being taken and how the construction process would be managed. That would include swept paths to show that the likely vehicle route would be from Great West Road into Gresham Road and into the site. We'd likely try and prevent any vehicles from coming from the south. And we'd like to see swept paths showing that it can safely access through Gresham Road. The swept paths we have at the moment available in the outline CLP, I believe they begin at the entrance to the site on Gresham Road. So they do show that when vehicles turning off Gresham Road into the site, there is sufficient space there. But we haven't got a swept path showing off the Great West Road down Gresham Road, but that would be secured in the construction logistics plan.
But that will be huge health and safety risk for the children and for the user of HCC,
The planning department's position is we'd be able to put in sufficient mitigation measures to ensure that any disturbance or harm to highway safety during construction would be minimized.
Discussion with the local residents and HCC and school regarding this.
I've had many discussions with local residents, the HCC and the school themselves. There are clearly some very, very important, serious concerns about construction, and I have had discussions with all of them. It's clear that there are concerns, and the other aspects in terms of the school, we would look to restrict the hours that construction deliveries can take place. Typically, we seek it to be 9:30 to 3 p.m. The conversations I've had with the school suggest that it may need to be a little bit tighter than that, but that's a sort of principal thing we try and do. So we would limit vehicles from coming there at the busy points in the morning when children are being dropped off, as well as the points in the afternoon when they're being picked up, as much as practically possible.
Chair, I may have a question later on, yeah?
No problem. Yeah, Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Chair. The projected contribution mentioned 51,000 seems minuscule. Was that sum assessed in-house?
In terms of did I go back and check that that was an accurate representation of the development?
No, clearly I need to be clearer. We have a panel or an accountant who comes in and checks it on our behalf. Was that exercise take place?
No, no checking of the figure took place. The NHS presented this figure to us, the contact who we use for all major applications that works out this contribution. They sent the figure over to me and the calculations in there, and it appeared to be in line with other applications that I've dealt with and didn't look to be out of the ordinary.
Okay, I'm very surprised about that.
I would like to know that we do rely on them to provide this contribution for us, and it would be an accurate representation, and there wouldn't be any inaccuracies in there.
I'll move on if I could, Chair, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You alluded to a local plan and the local plan withdrawn. I mean, the inspector, I think, turned down the original one that the council put forward. I will ask a rather naive question. Isn't this green belt land? I remember this was an old sports ground. How are we building on green land like that?
So the designation in the current local plan is local open space, so not green belt. So there is that protection to preserve the local space in that regard, and that's how the current local plan designates it. That being said, there was a study that took place in 2018 that informed the evidence base for our emerging local plan. That assessment deemed this site surplus to requirements. In terms of the value it has for local open space. We've all seen the images of the site. It's very overgrown, not open to the public, and provides very little value, if any, to the wider public in its function as local open space. And the wider area within the site is also not an area of deficiency. So that same assessment set out that the area around the site is one of the better areas in the borough for its provision of parks, play spaces, and amenity green spaces.
Okay, my final question is this, Chair. I've been overwhelmed with emails from a number of groups, different groups, making a very powerful case, and none of my colleagues have mentioned it. They deserve to be heard and their case put forward. My summation.
Councillor Todd, yes, we have speakers. They will speak later
I understand that, but they've spoken to me, and I've got to prove that I've read the papers, or we have. And at the moment, we don't appear to have done so. But if I was summarise it, a religious group is seeking an appropriate meeting room to address their charitable objectives. Now, I'm not a planning expert, but I was always trying to find the link between their righteous desire to develop the charity and their objectives and this scheme. Can you advise me?
Yeah, my assessment of the application in this regard is that the proposal is on the site next door, and the proposal sharing the access road would not restrict the existing available facilities in any way, either partially or wholly. So there would be no loss of community space in planning terms, and because there would be no loss, it doesn't trigger the policy requirements to either provide a space on site or help in relocating off site.
Thank you. Councillor Luki.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Nathan. A few questions on that. When presenting the designs facing north across the Great West Road, you said that there will be no impact on properties on the north side of Great West Road. On the in the report that but the I want to know what the distance is from the Great West Road, from the blocks to the Great West Road. How many meters is that from there from there across to onto the Great West Road? Yeah, the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how does that compare with the distances from the blocks in Osselier Spring Grove ward, at Penwerris Court and at West Court, and paragraphs 8.7.1. The report refers to Osterley Court as well, which, if you can tell us what the distance from the distance is of Osterley Court, the buildings to the Great West Road there. So you've got 3 blocks with varying distances. What are they, and how do they compare to what we've got here in the design?
So just to confirm, you are seeking the dimension or the distance of the proposed blocks from Great West Road, and then Penwerris, West Court, and Osterley Court from Great West Road as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how do they compare in terms of dips from the footways to the level of the neighbouring roads?
Yep. So starting with the proposed development, the blocks would be between 9 and 12 meters from the red line boundary, so the edge of the pavement on Great West Road. It would be slightly more than that if it's to the curb on Great West Road, but I don't have those figures in front of me at the moment. In terms of Osterley Court, Penwerris Court, and West Court, I believe I provided these dimensions to one of your residents earlier in the week. I don't have them in front of me. I know Osterley Court is set back around 40 meters from Great West Road, and I believe I advised that it was somewhere around 15 to 16 meters for Penwerris Court and West Court, around that from the edge of the pavement. That being said, that's not an accurate measurement that I have in front of me.
Okay, thanks for that. In terms of local open space, we did whilst it is an emerging plan, it's not completely accepted. It's not been completely accepted by the inspector. There is still room, is there not, during these consultations? These Article 19 or 18, one of those articles, that people can still raise this and argue the case for this remaining local open space during this consultation.
Yes, that's correct. The emerging local plan is an adopted policy at this point in time.
So there's a possibility that if there was sufficient argument on this, it could be possibly overturned by the inspector if there's sufficient argument on the need for local open space there. I mean, at the moment, it's not really well used. It's not that well accessible, but people do sort of bunk in there and play from the neighbourhood. Is this a little bit premature? Is this not premature to consider this application right now?
There's a few caveats to that. Firstly, it's my role to assess what's in front of me at the moment. I'm not able to indicate whether the level of objections would overcome or raise concerns to the extent that the allocation would be amended. The one point I will say is that this allocation had undergone examination previously, this exact allocation in its exact form as it is now. And at that point, under previous examination, there was no outstanding objections raised to that when it was presented to the inspector. Of course, that isn't the point it's at now. It is emerging, not adopted, and under consultation. And that would be my comment on that. I can't say any more whether that's a premature decision. It's the role of the committee to assess what's in front of us.
Just one more. Getting back to the distances of the proposed blocks from the Great West Road. Yeah, how do the heights compare to Penwerris Court and West Court across the road? How How
In
does that look?
meters, I don't have the meters of those courts. They're 3-story buildings with pitch roofs that are quite steep, and then we have a 4-story building in front of us in this proposal. As mentioned already, due to the site levels, if he was travelling either east or west on Great West Road, or if he was looking directly onto the site from the north, these buildings would be perceived to be 3 stories and on level with those properties on Penwaris and West Court. However, if they were put next to each other, as I said, this proposal would be a story above.
And thank you. And in terms of access to the site during construction or otherwise, not everybody arrives by car, or even probably on Friday. We're advised that people don't all arrive by car. There is scope for pedestrian access, isn't there, from further down Gresham Road and from the Great West Road? I'm just a bit concerned that should this get permission, and also when it gets permission, there'd be a lot of clamour for parking, not just on Gresham Road, annoying residents there perhaps, but also on the Great West Road, either side, and a danger crossing the road from the north side to get to the Conservative Club. Why anybody really want to go to the Conservative Club? Across to the Conservative Club, whether it's this a Friday event or any other events, because the parking at the moment, people do park on this site, don't they? When there's when they're able to, but this will completely go, and those vans park there. They're from the local van hire, and that could put more vans on the street, for example. How sure are we that there won't be congestion here or increased congestion here, and arguments between neighbours and users of the club on Gresham Road, on Stukely Road, on the Great West Road?
So just to clarify, the question is, would people coming to the club be then forced to park on the other side of the road and walk to the site, which would be unsafe? In terms of the parking surveys, what the policy states, we have to assess a walking distance of 200 meters. So firstly, opposite Great West Road, due to you can't just cross it, you have to go to the east and go under the subway. So it wouldn't be a convenient walking distance.
Stand there for 10 minutes and you watch people.
No, I know that it does happen, but
yeah.
my assessment can't be based on people doing that and crossing the road in that way. It has to be based on the actual pedestrian routes. And we typically 200 meters is a walking distance for a parking survey. So we'd be satisfied that there wouldn't be any additional congestion on Gresham Road or any of the other surrounding streets.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Dan, you want to come back? Any more? Oh yeah, sorry. Reese, yeah. Councillor Williams.
I think the issue of school security came up at some point from someone, and I'm just curious as to what the nature of that is and what the response is. I know that there's housing on 2 sides of the school as it is. I wonder if there's anything materially different in what's being proposed for residential on a 3rd side of the school that makes it any different to the existing condition elsewhere. And another one, obviously construction is important. We know it is always disruptive, but for the avoidance of doubt and benefit people in the room, I'm thinking that's not a material planning consideration for us tonight. It's a fact of life with all construction, with all developments, things have to get built, but it's not actually something that is a factor for us. Is that correct?
That is exactly the case. It's a consideration in the sense that we have a duty to manage and mitigate it. However, I cannot point this committee in the direction of any development plan policies that says that disturbances during construction is a reason for refusal or could be a reason for refusal. So on that ground, it wouldn't be appropriate to refuse, in my professional opinion, on that basis. And that is the remit. Whilst it's not a consideration in that sense. And with the was it the safety concerns with the school? So the conversations I've had with the head teacher and the business director at the school, it centered on construction, traffic, and safety of pupils throughout that, but also on the boundary treatment. So I'll just go into this plan here. You can see it's a relatively low boundary treatment, appropriate for what's there at the moment in terms of it being a local open space and there's no safety concerns. But they raised the issue that maybe a 1.5 meter fence needed to be increased in height just to ensure that there's no way for any residents of our development to be able to get access to that site. That concern was actually raised with us this week, so we haven't been able to update plans to reflect that. However, we will get a suitable boundary treatment via condition, which is 1.82 meters high, to ensure that any pedestrians couldn't get access to the school from that area.
Councillor Bowring, you want to come back?
Thank you. Yeah, on the cycle parking, it's great to see they've got space for larger bikes. Great to see the overall quantum. But I note that approximately 50% of them are two-tier racks, which are barriers to cycling. Some people don't like them. Some people can't use them. Now, I know on very constrained sites, we use them because that's just the only practical solution. But on a site like this, where over provides on an amenity space and has so much space, is there a reason we didn't push for more Sheffield stands? And could a condition be secured to increase the quantum of Sheffield stands over two-tier?
So we did put the question to the developer and the agent as can this be accommodated? There is an over provision, so as you rightly say, there is room where it can be provided. In terms of a condition, the current quantum of the current split of cycle stands is dead on the policy requirement in that regard. So we wouldn't be able to use a planning condition to expect going above and beyond that in that way. The minimum we'd be able to put is the policy compliant level. That being said, we can have discussions with them still and try and encourage that to happen.
Is this the Sustrans guidance?
That will be the West Trans cycle parking guidance that we would use for the split of Sheffield stands and two-tier. But as Nathan has mentioned about the condition, the condition will require full details of cycle parking to be submitted and approved. With that being the case, we can then ensure that a more appropriate mix, if it's requested by councillors, is achieved. For example, 100% Sheffield stands.
Doesn't the West Trans guidance say 50% should be the starting point or the minimum?
Yeah, 50%, yes.
So 50% isn't that's perfect, that's bare minimum.
That's right, yes. But as they have proposed a policy compliant layout, we were happy to accept that. Yeah, from a transport perspective, I wasn't aware of the over provision of amenity space. So,
all right, thank you. Councillor Stroud.
I'm not sure whether this is appropriate for Nathan to answer or whether he might want to come back to it later, but just, you've obviously received quite a lot of objections to this as all the members of the committee are. When I counted up in my inbox, it was in excess of 40. However, and this is really for some of the people who are either watching online or listening from the audience, we just need to clarify a point that when I read them, and I did actually read them all, it became apparent to me that in excess of 80% of them were actually a template letter with a different name on it. And the fact that an objection is raised 40 times, 50 times, 100 times has no material effect on that objection. It is still one objection. Is my reading of that correct, or do we need to get our lawyer to give us a steer on that one?
Yeah, would you?
Yeah, that's correct. It's one objection. The volume is the objection is a material consideration, but the volume is not a material consideration. It might be an indication there's an issue there that you need to take on board, but the volume is certainly not. Certainly not.
You want another question? Yeah, go on. Last one. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to dig into this amenity space point that I read in the letter again, saying that there'd be a loss of amenity space. And from my understanding, this is some disused tennis courts that are used as overflow parking. Do we First, do we know when the last time this was actually used as any sort of actual open space? And am I right in thinking that the HCC used to own this land, but has since sold it off, deeming it, I suppose, surplus to their open space requirements as well as the council's? But and they're parking on it even though they don't own it.
Yeah.
Would that be a fair assessment of what's going on?
Yeah, so in terms of the first question, as you're right, there's my assessment is there's really no value to the site at the moment as a local open space and doesn't provide any function or benefit to the local community. And whilst the overall amount of unbuilt area would be reduced by the erection of the blocks, the quality of the amenity space would bring that back into use, and it is a considerate benefit for the local open space. My understanding is this site was previously owned by the HCC and is now not been, or is now not owned by them, and they've since sold that on. But the developer and agent may be able to better answer that question.
Sorry, Councillor, just a point on the site being used as overspill parking as well. The site is not considered to have a lawful use for parking at the moment, and that use of parking could be removed by the landowner at any point, whether permission is given for the development tonight or not.
Yeah. Just quickly, because I think this will be an issue as well. The heights, right? It's 1 story taller than everything in the surrounding area. Can you explain in policy terms why that is acceptable to Hounslow?
Yes, there are many sort of elements of my assessment that would indicate why 4 stories on this site is acceptable. Firstly, I think that the blocks fit very comfortably within each other and very spaciously. They're not sort of crammed in. There is the 17.5 meters, so slightly below what we consider optimal separation distance. There's also an over provision of amenity space, and all these factors indicate that they haven't crammed as much on here as possible. So with that being said, the 4 stories in its form is considered an appropriate quantum of development. And then, yes, whilst it is a story above and policies do encourage general coherency, there's no rigid adherence to it has to be the same height as other buildings in the area. And our design codes SPD also states that within this area, heights of up to 8 stories could be acceptable, which is quite double the height of these blocks. It does caveat in some locations, but my assessment is that the 4 stories is wholly appropriate.
Thank you. And this policy CC3, which is in our emerging plan, that encourages gentle densification, doesn't it?
Yes.
But that's not adopted. That's emerging.
Yeah, that's emerging. I'm not sure if that wording is brand new either, or if it comes from, is it also in our adopted policy CC3? CC3 is the policy on tall buildings, and this proposal would in any way be in accordance with that adopted policy.
Thank you. Last question, Councillor Luki.
I just remembered this one because residents have told me, residents on my side of the Great West Road, who are probably close, as close as any to the site compared to the rest of Heston East Ward, with respect to Heston East councillors. They were not, when the consultations took place in July, there were no invitations to residents on that side. How does this fit in with our policy as a local authority of applicants, developers consulting with the neighbours?
So firstly, it's the role of the council to notify properties or notify neighbouring properties that would be impacted by an application. 283, I believe it is in the report, neighbouring properties were notified by us about the original proposal, and all of those letters appear to be received. When we was organising the consultation event with the developer and they'd informed me that they'd booked the venue, I provided the full list of addresses who were consulted on the original application, and that list, they informed me that they had sent an invitation to all of the properties on that list, and there were many neighbours in attendance from, I believe, on the northern side of Great West Road in your ward, and I had conversations with a few of them.
Thank you. We'll hear from residents in a sec. But thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, members. We had some very good questions. Now, can I invite Councillor Siddiqui and Councillor Chaudhary, please? Councillors, you had 5 minutes in total, and we informed you when 30 seconds left. Would you take the time? Your time will start when you start speaking, yeah?
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. Thank you very much, the planning department, of putting this presentation together. Nathan, can I just request you to flash my slides now? And sir, my time should start when the slide comes over. It's not there. Yes, thank you very much, Nathan. So I think I will address the committee here with an understanding that they will realize that how kind of impactful this whole arrangement and this plan is for the local residents there. My presentation will will look into three things. One is the access, secondly, the community use, and thirdly, basically looking into the enmassing of the area and how it is out of character. So if I may just request your attention to the slide number 1 here. We have been advised that would be a modular construction. The site has no access from 3 sides: Rail, Oakland School, and Great West Road. This site, which goes through a very narrow road to where the site ends, basically. And I've given for just clarity what it is, basically, how the site is accessed. The first picture just tells some of the most narrow aspect of the access this site will use to get to the plot where it is being developed. And the site will be using modular construction, which means there would be like 27-ton trawlers coming in to drop off the stuff. You're talking about serious big machines coming through, and they cannot pass that. The widest point which which Nathan has provided us is 3.9 meters, which is still, I would think, a little bit sort of liberal in terms of calculation. My own calculation say the widest point is not that much. The most narrowest point on that road is 1.3 meter. So you cannot take away that if 1.3 meters is the excess, that is the excess. That's that if you can't enter from there, you can't go anywhere. So this is the excess, and the trolleys with the 27-ton trawlers, which many of you would understand how large they are, they cannot pass through. So this is seriously, unconsidered plan, or whoever has sort of put it forward. Secondly, I would also give an idea in terms of how community uses these facilities, and that's where the clash will happen: health and safety issues. I'm not talking about this somebody just casually walking through. Health and safety issues are a major concern here. And if Nathan, you would move to the second slide, please. Thank you very much. So Hounslow pride itself as a community of various different races, religion, and denomination. And this conservative club is an sort of is some or the other lives the spirit of that, basically. If you look around, we have got people from across different communities using it. It's not only the Muslim community, it's not only the Christian community, the Jew community. Every community is using this facility, and it will seriously impact that community, because when you're constructing that level of over constructing in that area, the HCC will lose that usage. And community, for your information, has no access of a community hall or anything like that in the vicinity. So whatever is available, community pays it, charges to use it, and then community uses it, basically. So, and council has not provided anything. Neither the builder we have approached has sort of given any indication that he's going to do it. Secondly, I've been told that there was a discussion that the site would be expanded, the access would be expanded. May I just remind you that this site is under a lease agreement with the second party, and whoever owns the site does not have sort of full rights to get that done. So there's a bit of complication there. And then unless and until we understand how that's going to happen, we cannot go ahead and agree to this plan. I think this is seriously flawed on that terms. And then kind of, we need to sort of, understand that. Secondly, this site is looking at Penrith Avenue and Australia Court as height. You've got HCC Club next to it. Auckland has two big buildings next to it where it sits. You're not using that as a height sort of relative what height you can go. You would be overlooking the school. You would be overlooking the HCC, which is not acceptable. This site was 30 seconds now. Yeah.
40 seconds. 40 seconds. 40 seconds.
40 seconds now. 40
only
seconds.
5 minutes between you two.
Yeah, so I would like to speak as well. Thank you. So I'd like to speak on behalf of the residents who've contacted me and about this. So that's what I was trying to get your attention, Aftab. As you can see, that this land was once used as a former sports facility by TfL, and it's a shame it's become an eyesore. I attended the HCC to see Peter Carey's wake, the late Peter Carey councillor. And residents aren't against development, they are just against the mass of development that is over here. So in the local plan, we had 10 dwellings, which would be more appropriate, and residents would be welcoming that. But 56 flats is massive. It will mean an influx of people in the area, in an area that's already struggling in terms of infrastructure. You talked about Osterley Tube Station. You're very lucky to get on the train during the peak hours because it is packed. So you have to wait for numerous trains to go by. So having 18 car parking spaces, great, that means less cars on the road, but it doesn't mean that people who live there won't be able to get around.
Thank you, Councillor. Time up.
Can I just add that residents, like I said, they're not against
Sorry,
development.
the time is up. I'll give it a little extra for the confusion.
Members got questions. Okay, Councillor Boring first, then please.
Yes, a question for Aftab. You referred to obviously the amazing community things that occur at the HCC, but I think if I heard you correctly, you said there was a concern that they were going to lose the access to the HCC. Can you just explain that a bit more?
Thank you very much, Councillor Dan. I think the way I would explain it, that there are two stages. The first stage is when we've got when the construction is underway. That would be a very serious situation where you've got these big these trucks bringing huge modular, prefabricated arrangements to the site. They can't even enter the site, so that's out of question. I think we'll be mad if if anything happens like that. That's the first thing. So that if that happens, people cannot access the site because you cannot be seen with the children and be in the area where these articulated lorries are moving around. That's how we will lose the first site. Secondly, if you look at this site, and as my fellow councillor Unsa said, this site was initially allocated as a 10 dwelling houses, which is perfectly fine. And I apologize to Unsa now because I thought you would tell me when my time is over and I'll leave, basically. So my profound apologies to Unsa here. But yeah, sorry. So, but I'll answer the question. The second thing is that we have once we've got these 56 houses there, you're talking about 56 people living there. There are 56 basically deliveries coming. Their guests, their guests coming. All what comes with a normal living, basically. All that traffic into that very narrow road, which is 1.3 meter at its narrowest, basically. So hardly a car can pass. So that is also would cause trouble, that it would be a bit conflict between the HCC. Unless and until the developer thinks he'll flat the HCC, there is no way this could go basically, because this would be an accident in waiting, basically. Because something will sure shot happen if you got so many people coming around and using that narrow bend of road. We use it very frequently. We've got age concern, we've got Mulberry, we've got Rotary, we've got the Muslim class fund basically using
understand
so
your point now.
it would cause serious high, and we don't have any other place to go to.
So I'm still confused at the lose. Are you more saying it'd be harder and to access it rather than they wouldn't be able to use the site at all? Or are you saying no, not a single person could get in, they'd lose, they couldn't do anything there?
I think you've put it very correctly. It would be very hard to mix the two communities because HCC, last night I was there, Tambola was happening and the car park was full. Just imagine that people coming in basically and going out, and then you've got 56 houses who have no access. So there'll be a lot of conflict there, and that is under a lease, so you can't expand the road as the developer has made us believe.
Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair. Have you considered that before buying the site and spending lots and lots of money bringing forward a planning application, the applicant might have had some regard to whether they could actually build the thing in the first place? I mean, I accept that you're saying one sort of truck can't be used. I'm assuming that the construction logistics plan will sort this out and it will be a way to do it. And you also acknowledge that it's not a material planning consideration, which is, again, something we're going to have to keep referencing because it's not actually material to what we can actually decide on. Also, I'm sure you're aware that Tom Bruce met with people from the HCC and explained that this cannot come. You're not losing an amenity, so they're not going to provide one. and said, talk to us about accessing SIL. There's going to be £810,000 of SIL from this that goes into the pot that the council has, which we give out to the Thriving Communities Fund. Are you talking to people in the council and talking to members of your community about accessing that money to get a facility where you can? Because that's not relevant to planning, but it is something that can actually be progressed through other avenues.
Thank you very much, Councillor William, for your answer and clarifying that it's not a planning consideration. But do you think the health and safety is a planning consideration, or you think that's also not? No, please, if you can respond. If it's not, then I'll stop and leave the room.
Councillor Siddiqui, you cannot ask questions. He's asking
Okay.
you
Oh,
questions.
sorry.
Just answer that.
Yeah, because the way he's put the question, I think it for me to clarify it. So health and safety is a consideration, and this site, while 18 to 22 months, and you're right, basically, there is a construction plan to be had, there is a transportation plan to be had, and all those kind of things. But the thing is that all that starts if this site or the developer has given us a clear idea that he can kind of expand the road. There's no possibility of doing that because of various different what you call commercial interest in that. We've got trees which are probably quite old trees on that area, and we mentioned that we may have a net gain of 16% of biodiversity, but probably not. We have not assessed that when we broaden that road, we chop off those trees and all that greenery. What's the net gain of biodiversity? Probably nil. So probably these are the considerations which I want you to sort of completely look at and make a very informed decision. Because if you've got a road which 1.3 meter minimum place, that's the bottleneck. If it's 1.3, that regardless if it's on the top of it, it's 7 meters, and at the end of it, it's 6 meters. 1.3 you can't pass through. So, and you're going to sort of, broaden on what basis? We don't, and the developer has not even provided any indication regarding Tom's discussion we had. Definitely, we had some discussions. Tom said he will provide, and you brought it, so I have to respond to it, is that Tom said he'll send us a list of possible places which council can provide to be used as community center. We are waiting still.
I'm sure Councillor Siddiqui, council can help you to look for these things later on. Yeah, but this is a planning application for this book. Yeah. Okay. You can answer that later on, Nathan. No, I'll come back to you later on. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
was just going to say,
Yeah.
I mean, my understanding from reading the papers is the road is being widened and the pavement is being widened. I don't know if that's
Yeah, that's. Do you want me to answer that now? I mean, please. All right, no problem. Yeah, if I just address it very quickly. So the measurements I provided, the pedestrian path is 1.3 meters wide, but I'm not sure that there's no part of the actual road that the stat 1.3 meters wide. The minimum width of the road is 3.9 meters, and the development would increase the width to 4.1, as well as increasing the width of the footpath to 2 meters.
So the minimum is 3.9 meters.
The minimum existing is 3.9. The minimum proposed is 4.1.
Yeah, it's 4.1. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for your presentation, both of you. But one of the things I would say, obviously, as an experienced councillor, Councillor Siddiqui particularly, you will be aware, of course, that disturbance caused during construction is not a valid planning objection and can never be so, because otherwise we would never build anything. So I think we should park that one to one side. And the other thing, what worries me about this site, once again, you will both know that currently in this borough, we have over 6,000 families looking for a permanent home, desperate for a permanent home. This is not going to solve that, but it's going to go part way to it. This is effectively a brownfield site that's got tarmac on it, an air raid shelter in the middle of it, and it's overgrown. Convince me that there is no better use for this site than providing some of our families who have been on a waiting list for years for the chance to have somewhere to call home. And if you can think of a better use for this site, you're doing better than I can, sir.
So you've mentioned there about family homes. In the application, they've put 16 one-bedroom properties, 6. You say 2 persons, but if you buy a house or rent a house, you don't get to decide how many people are there. It's a one-person It is a 1 bed, so they may be targeting 2 people, but it's possible only 1 person lives there. So having more family homes would be welcome. Hence the 10 dwellings, if they were to do those, they would be larger size homes. And as you know, on our waiting list, families that are 4, 5, 6, whatever size families who need larger bedrooms, that's not considered at all. The maximum here is a 3-bedroom property, which sure, it says it might be able to house 5 people, but obviously that's dependent on their gender and age. So the families that really need support are the larger families who aren't able to get these homes. And equally, everyone deserves a right to a nice property, a nice home. Of course they do. And part of the issue with this is around the balconies, which overlook into other homes. So if they can provide some more privacy for the people by changing how the balconies look, then obviously that would be better.
I'm glad you raised that, because I've looked at this site quite closely. I've been past it. It's bordered by a Conservative club, a school, a railway line, and a major road. I fail to see overlooking, but I'm glad we agree on the housing. That is very positive, Councillor. And you'll be aware as well that one of our biggest demands on housing since the last government changed the rules on homelessness is the demand to house our homeless population, many of whom are single people. So this, and I'm pleased to say, it does address part of our major target, homeless, which is single person. So I think we should decry the single bedroom. It is important, but I've still not heard what you think a better use for this than an overspill car park for the Conservative club, rather than giving 56 families a permanent home.
I did say that the dwellings of a smaller size would be more welcome by the residents. So that is an example. In terms of the overlooking, I know they're going to increase the screening for the school, but that is quite significant. We've got vulnerable children at this school, which you don't seem to be taking into consideration. You're talking about single families here, but we do need homes for bigger families too. And yes, bigger families are homeless too. So that you don't have to be a single person to be homeless. You can be in a family who are staying in a friend's home, for example, and be homeless. So the definition of homelessness is not only to single people or families.
And also considering that what's the nature of the area is Gresham Road has got all houses which are single dwelling houses. There's not a single flat or tall building there. This is totally out of character with the local area. And the same goes with the height. Height is more than Oakland School and the HCC, which is next to it. And some or the other, they're trying to sort of make it as big as Penveris Avenue, which doesn't make sense, which is 100 meters away. Nathan was at one end using...
That was not the question. Thank you. Councillor Dookie.
I was just concerned that Councillor Siddiqui hogged it and didn't allow enough time for my other colleague, my other ward colleague, Councillor Chowdhury, to put across what residents have said to her. She was about to start and she ran out of time. So what were your concerns? What were your residents' concerns, Councillor Chowdhury, before you stopped abruptly? Thank you, Chair. Your indulgence. Thank you.
Yeah, legal advisor.
I just think we need a specific question to the speaker in relation to your concerns, to clarify what's already been said, or
right,
rather than a very open well, not quite question.
All right, okay, give us a bit of time then. You know, if you stop talking with respect, Councillor Chowdhury, you and I and the Councillor Siddiqui have met residents. I've been unable to ask residents questions because I'm on the planning committee. What are the residents' concerns about massing, about closeness to the Great West Road, and closeness to not just the blocks of flats at Penweris and Westcourt, but also the houses and the access across the road? Thank you.
So residents have said that it is out of character of the local area, as you've mentioned, of the flats that are on the opposite side. They are set further back, whereas this is set quite closely to the Great West Road. And as was mentioned previously, the residents hadn't been consulted along that side. I know Mr. Ringer said that they were, but actually no, they weren't. All the residents I've spoken to have said they haven't. So I'd be keen to hear which residents he believes that live on that side he has spoken to. Residents are also really concerned about the vulnerable children and the overlooking onto the school. We have slightly addressed that, but I think there's more work that can be done to ensure that those children are safe and protected. They're also concerned about loss of amenity. So when the building was built in the first place, it was designated that there would be some community access to that area, and the open space has been used. It has, as you say, currently not been used, but it has in the past, and it doesn't mean that residents don't wish to exercise that right to use it again. They've also concerned about the balconies, which have been mentioned a few times, in terms of overlooking into the school, into the neighbouring properties as well. So there's quite a few things here, and as I've said, residents are not against development of this area, but they are against development of 3 separate blocks, which again do not look like other blocks in the area. And as you've mentioned, are 4 stories tall, so they are taller. As you say, that the area is lower, therefore from the outside doesn't look as imposing, but it will still be imposing because they are 3 blocks. Thanks.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands, so thank you very much, councillors. Now, can I invite the objectors? Now, I can see 6, 7 names there. I just make sure there are 5 minutes in total. So you decide how you want to speak. It starts from resident Jazz Sound to William ET Planning. There's 6 or 7 people. So you will be given 5 minutes in total. Can I invite you, please? Can I be very clear? The 5 minutes in total for all the speakers, yeah?
Sorry, can I say I'll be operating the clock? I'm not. It's for you to divide the time between yourselves. I'm not to do that, and I'll or the chair will say when it's 30 seconds overall. So as in 4 minutes 30 seconds, just to be clear about that, and so people be ready to so we covered. I think you need to do that yourself.
I just want 1 minute.
Listen, no, it's the members asking the objectors. Objectors are speaking at the moment. Your name is not on the objector list. I'm sorry. We'll come back to you if you got some time.
I'm part of it.
I know.
That's why we are here. You're giving us 5 minutes for 6 objectives.
Yeah. Okay. This is what our community planning law allows us. I think our legal advisor will clear that.
Can say anything, but this is the time you should listen to the objectives.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me,
That's what they're doing. Yeah.
that this part of the process. Actually, Hounslow is more generous than other councils in relation to this. I do many committees. This is across the country as regards to this is a meeting held in public. It's not a public meeting. I hope you understand that distinction. Yeah, and so this is the process. It's part of the constitution of all councils, and this council said 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for the applicant, and that's fair and balanced, and it's no different, and it's supported by law. So we need to hear from those objectors who've registered.
Thank you. Right, your time will start as soon as you speak. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good evening, respected committee councillors. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jazz Saund, speaking as a resident and member of the Osterley Amenities Association. I've been a permanent resident here opposite the HCC Club over 40 years. I live on the north side of the road. And I just want to say I'm objecting for the following reasons, representing everybody that on the north side and everywhere around. Proposal is going to be significantly taller than the HCC as it's not set back enough. 9 meters would not mitigate the harm that it does to the outlook on the road, and it would harm everyone within that vicinity. It would lead to an overbearing, constant, obtrusive presence to the permanent residents. I also want to say that this is a densely populated development opposite on the north side. Okay, And I want to also add that nobody on the north side was consulted. We didn't receive letters, so I don't know where that's come from. And we aren't against the development as such, but would welcome a modest proposal to preserve the character and aspects of the area, including our respected listed grade 2 building. We are on the doorstep of it, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Phil Williams. I'm an RTPI town planner representing Darul Iglis, registered charity. I'm here with representatives from the charity. Darul Iglis were only made aware of the proposals fairly recently, which is why we took in our objection quite late. We were asked to undertake a review of the planning application, and we did that relatively quickly. The case officer described this as a separate site, and there has been some discussion as to whether this is a community facility. Darul Iglis use HCC for community events, and until recently used the site for parking, and is very much considered part of the HCC wider footprint. Councillor Todd mentioned the building was the history of the building and that sort of community facility, and we very much see it as a community facility. Residents raised concern about the safety of the access arrangements for pedestrian and cars. We haven't seen a highways response, but we have considered that we think it's really important that councillors consider the times that residents will be using this access point vis-a-vis the school building nearby and the extra volume of traffic that this may generate. We have concerns about the height of the building. This has been raised by residents. We think this contradicts policy CC2. We also have concerns regarding private amenity space and the lack of that's already been discussed, and the privacy as a result of the separation distances. It's recognised that the balconies do provide private amenity space. As the case officer suggested, this highlights some issues to do with daylight and sunlight levels in some of the properties. Privacy is a key concern for us. We express issues in our representations regarding separation distances, and we think this is low given the site's location and the types of properties around it. We also raised concerns regarding the single aspect nature of the properties. The level of noise by the surrounding road and railway has implications here. A fundamental issue, and this is really down for a planning judgment for you guys to make here this evening, is the weight given to the allocation. We think that the allocation should be described less weight than the case officer and the planning department, but we completely respect the right of the council to make that determination themselves. Our strong view is the application should be refused on the following grounds: loss of community facilities, inadequate parking, the height of the building in relation to the surrounding properties, the access arrangements, privacy.
30 seconds, Speaker.
Private amenity space for residents, the daylight to the sun levels for new development. As the resident has said, all of these factors point to an overdevelopment of the site. This makes it wholly inappropriate for the site's context, and we hope that members will refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, open for questions. Yeah, Councillor Kiani.
You just mentioned here daylight and sunlight. Can you explain how this will be affected?
The daylight and sunlight with the balconies, as the case officer highlighted, protrude out, and that has implications to the daylight and sunlight that the flats will experience at different times. I think there was a report that the applicants commissioned where he considers this, and it's presented in full.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Loss of community amenity. I've enjoyed reading your letter. It's as we were just discussing before, this is a former set of disused tennis courts that's used for overspill parking that the HCC sold off, and people have been parking on illegally. it's not taking away any space from the HCC. It's not affecting any of the spaces or the rooms or the availability to use anything in the building. How is there a loss of community amenity involved in this application?
Could we both answer?
Well, from a resident perspective, I think the consensus amongst all the residents in the area is that we would really, really like to use that space. If the council, the HCC offered it, to us, we all want to use it. We were sort of,
But the
want them
HCC
to
sold
know
it.
that.
The
Well,
HCC sold it to a developer. It's private land. We don't.
Yeah, referring back to what could be done with that space, I mean, it could be reviewed by your planning department as to its use, because that is amenity space for everyone, and I think it could be used by all the residents in the area, because we don't have direct amenity to use over there, and this development would not really be suitable for going across the road and using it like in a relaxing context. They're just walkways between the blocks essentially, and I don't consider that valuable amenity space.
Would it be fair to say it's more valuable amenity space than the amenity space that's currently there?
Well, I mean, the council, as somebody brought it up earlier on this evening, that space should be reviewed under the development plan, and there should be a kind of a survey done amongst all the local people as to how they would like that space used, because that survey was never really completed, from my understanding.
Right, I can't see any more hands. Yeah, Tony, Councillor Luki.
This is a question for Mrs. Saund. Why do you disagree with the heights and the distances, heights of the blocks and the distances from the pavement on Great West Road, as it affects yourselves?
Okay, so coming back to how it would affect the residents, and I represent everyone on the north side particularly, because yes, we would be able to see this development, unlike what others were saying earlier on. We would definitely see this. It would be in our face, and it would tower significantly above the HCC. So we have to use HCC as a reference parameter for the whole development here. And I believe that the school also needs to come into the context here as well. So this would effectively tower above it. And as residents, if it was, we would feel that 9 meters isn't sufficient to mitigate that effect, that harm that it's going to create, the overbearing nature of these flats. So I think if they moved it back, they reduced the height, that would kind of restore the openness that we so much treasure. And yet it would be a win-win for everyone. There would be homes as well for people. So we're not against development, but we're being reasonable. We want to come to a sort of a point where, everyone can see our point of view as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Reese Williams, sorry.
Thank you. Just one more question for the planning consultant. You talk about single aspect and daylight sunlight. In your professional experience working on schemes wherever they are, is an 86% of properties being dual aspect, 48 out of 56? In your experience, is that actually good or bad compared to what you would normally get on an average application? Likewise, on daylight sunlight, would having 95% of the rooms and 96% of each of the households exceeding the daylight sunlight requirements, would that be, compared to your average application that gets through, good or bad, better than most? Just where would you rate that overall?
So you're right. There is different levels of schemes, different levels of daylight sunlight. Majority of the schemes that I work on have been care homes, and from those types of schemes, daylight and sunlight is is regarded as being very important. We've put in this letter our argument and our view. You're welcome to take it as is or disagree with it. In terms of the point that you made about whether it's a community facility and whether that's a good or a bad thing, I suppose the point I would come back to with this site in particular, and what I was struck by, is that this was part of a wider site, and it's been chipped away slowly over time. And there were aspirations for the site, and they've always been a bit sort of watered down here and watered down there, and that's what's happening tonight. And you have a decision as councillors whether you're going to allow that to happen. You've got to decide whether you're going to let people that run community facilities to trim a little bit off here, trim a little bit off there, and suddenly it becomes something that's of value to people. And it's obviously of value to people here this evening because they've come.
If you were our planning consultant and we'd hired you, would you be realistically advising us that we could reject this and it would actually stand up in front of a planning inspectorate, considering it's an allocated site in an emerging local plan, which I know you contest it, but let's be fair, at this stage it does carry moderate weight. It obviously is going to come on the books in a year. I mean, I suppose I could go away, come back in a year when it's definitely got a housing allocation, and you know, we do. I just don't. What would you be advising if you're on the other side? Because it feels like you're asking. It's a tough ask what you're asking in terms of where planning policy actually is, what we're being asked to judge against.
I'm happy to answer the point. Councillors, through their local plan process, do allocate sites and do have the decisions to make regarding this. My personal view is that 18 people commented on the Regulation 18 local plan. The open space assessment didn't really mention the site specifically. It sort of talks about general stuff, but it's quite, it's for a resident to really interrogate it and be aware of it. How much are they going to know? Then I think, the Regulation 19 process, a lot of the local authorities that I've dealt with and put in representations, hundreds of people put in representations. These are considered by councils for huge lengths of time and go through the proper process. So as a result, the NPPF is clear that you as an authority can make a determination as to how much weight you can put onto these things, but there are factors. And so from my point of view, those three factors listed in the NPPF would be the considerations that I'd be pointing to you as councillors.
Thank you. I can't see any more hand. Thank you very much. You can take your seat, please. Yeah. Switch the mic off, please. Okay. Can I now invite the applicant, Christopher Cooper?
Sorry, Chair, there was people from Open School.
Oh. So do we have to give 5 minutes to them?
No, but they were part of that 5 minutes. Did they?
But that's 5 minutes.
No. There's only 1 5 minutes.
Only 5 minutes, that's gone. Sorry,
No.
gentlemen. We were only given 5 minutes, that's gone. So we can't give you any extra time.
This is the developer.
Sorry, that's the applicant. No, you, I'm very sorry, you can. I was told there are other people objectors. So I'm talking about different levels. Sorry. Yeah, you got 5 minutes. Councillor, you should know better than the public. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Chris Cooper and I'm from Carter Jonas, and we're the planning consultants representing the applicant Gresham Park Limited. I'm joined here by Dave Hughes of Hughes Architects. The application before you this evening represents the culmination of work with officers at the council
the community and other consultees to create a scheme which is not only appropriate in design and planning terms, but also represents the best use of an underutilised and neglected site. The proposed development will deliver a number of significant benefits to the borough. The proposed development comprises of 56 much needed new high quality residential homes. 29% of the proposed homes will be delivered as affordable housing, of which 60% will be social rented and 40% shared ownership. The new homes will be delivered as a variety of types and sizes, 61% of the homes being family sized. The affordable and private homes are all designed to the same quality and specifications, with no single aspect north-facing homes, and all served by excellent daylight and sunlight levels. The proposals will deliver enhanced green spaces across the site, with around 1,600 square metres of accessible landscaped external amenity spaces, 2 courtyard gardens, with play space for all ages, together with the delivery of 73 new trees. The scheme will deliver a 16.1 provision of BNG, biodiversity net gain. The provision of private and communal amenity space together with play space will exceed policy requirements, delivering significant benefits for future residents in the surrounding area. Although currently designated as local open space in the adopted local plan, the site does not function as an open space and was identified as surplus to requirements in the council's evidence base supporting its emerging local plan. The proposals will result in new and enhanced connections to the surrounding streets with new pedestrian access points, including an accessible ramp linking Gresham Road and Great West Road. The width of the road and the existing pedestrian footpath forward of the Conservative Club will be increased to improve pedestrian and highway safety. The proposals will also be highly sustainable, built using energy efficient modular homes, contributing towards the council's net zero carbon vision. The new homes represent a 55% saving of CO2 compared to the life of a traditional house, and with only 1/27th of embodied CO2. The proposals will be supported by air source heat pumps and a significant quantum of rooftop solar PVs. In terms of the design, the buildings are set down from the Great West Road, and so whilst 4 stories in height, they'll appear as 3-storey buildings in wider views. Further, they are set back from the road and will be screened by significant new planting. The site isn't located within the conservation area, and the Grade 2 listed Ostley Underground Station is a significant distance from the site to the northeast. The proposals represent an entirely appropriate design response to this location, with materials and finishes taking cues from existing surrounding development. The buildings will be located a significant distance from any other neighbouring properties, including those on the north side of the Great West Road. The buildings will not result in any adverse impact on the amenities of the occupiers of any neighbouring property. In terms of transport, the proposed level of car parking meets policy requirements, providing a level of car parking appropriate to this location, including the 3 blue badge spaces. 4 active EV charging spaces are also proposed. In terms of cycle parking, the numbers and type are policy compliant, providing a total of 110 spaces split between Sheffield stands and 2-tier stands. In terms of the school, and as a result of engagement prior to submission of the application, car parking spaces and bin and cycle stores were removed from land immediately adjacent to the school building. Deciduous trees were also replaced adjacent to the southern boundary to reduce impacts in terms of daylight received, but also to maintain health and safety for pupils using the footpath running alongside the southern edge of the boundary. The applicants committed to working with the school to ensure that impacts from construction are mitigated as far as is possible, and we're happy to continue exploring the appropriate enhanced security measures along the boundary with the site, which has already been mentioned. Similarly, we've met with the Hounslow Conservative Club and members of the community group, Darrell Ickles, and the applicant acknowledges the concerns raised regarding the impacts that construction may have on their operation. The applicants confirmed its desire to continue engaging with the group and to ensure that impacts from construction are mitigated as far as is possible. In summary, the proposed development will optimise the opportunity for new residential homes as presented by its allocation in the emerging local plan, and will bring with it a number of significant benefits to the borough and the wider area, including the delivery of much needed affordable homes. Thank you. We're happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Members, questions for Councillor Luki?
Thank you for your presentation. Just want you to confirm by how much the access to the site will be increased from to, please. That's one. I've got a couple of others, but they're about trees.
That's fine. Thank you for the question. The access is going to be increased. So vehicular access will be increased from 3.9 to 4.1 metres, and the pedestrian footpath will be increased from 1.3 to 2 metres.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that did you mention that deciduous trees will be removed, and if so, what will they be replaced with? And also, what type of trees will be planted on the roadside part of the development, please? And in what kind of positions, if you like? You mentioned something like 80, was it? Can't remember, but doesn't matter.
Yeah, 73 new trees, just for. So of course, just going back to your first point regarding school. So the point I was making about the deciduous trees was we engaged with the school prior to preparing and submitting the application. And as part of that, we went and visited the school. We went to see the area immediately adjacent to the boundary with the site, and concerns were raised about our proposals at the time, having trees that may lose their leaves, and that causing issues for pupils who may use sort of access path alongside. So as a result, as part of our landscaping strategy, we were happy to sort of address those concerns. And so as part of the landscaping, we've now got hedgerows or trees along there that are proposed not to lose their leaves, so types of trees that would, of course, retain them to overcome those issues. And we have a comprehensive landscaping strategy, including master plan and various drawings that have all been submitted with the application. They also detail the trees that would be delivered across the northern boundary, and the drawings up on the screen at the moment. I'm sorry, I can't tell you the individual species off the top of my head, but the idea of the landscaping strategy was to ensure it's a robust strategy to ensure screening, because we understand the concerns, about how residents may feel about how the scheme may be seen. We consider, there's a large distance between our site. We've got the Great West Road in between and the properties to the north, but in any event, we want to provide a comprehensive landscaping scheme that not only benefits future residents of this scheme, but also helps the scheme to really sort of settle into this position along the Great West Road.
That boundary there is quite well shrubbed, and it's got some established trees as well. But when having met residents right at the outset, before anything was even before anything was really even submitted, was how do you and how can you maximize the amount of planting there on the boundary? From what I know, and I know even though it's not my ward, it's on the right on the boundary and right across the road from 73 trees probably don't seem enough. It is quite a wide site there, and how can we increase that amount and have some impact and some influence on what's planted there and the types of and the species that are planted there, and the size, because some of these will take ages to grow. We want some trees that are have already kicked off. Now David over there knows these conversations from our discussions at Brentford Football Club training ground. So and the boundaries there. So we'd be looking for something really serious here. Not just for our residents on the north side, but also for anybody that's going to end up living there.
Thanks. So obviously, as part of preparing the application, we aren't just, there will be existing trees retained in addition to those that are proposed. As you can see from the drawing on the screen, I mean, the number of trees is fairly significant when you look at the kind of canopy sizes. And of course, as part of any landscaping scheme, it's pertinent to ensure that you have a mix of trees in terms of size and scale. So not just planting brand new small trees, but ensuring actually there are some mature trees that go in there as well. Now, we do have an agreed landscaping strategy. It's gone in as a planning condition to say we must adhere to those requirements. If it's something that, it's felt so strongly, then maybe there can be further discussion about the landscaping. But I would say that the scheme that is before the committee today is a robust landscaping scheme that, sort of it really reflects the large amount of amenity space that we're proposing. So,
looking at it closer, Chair. Looking at it closer, I can only count 14 trees there on that boundary. If we can, and I'll take half an hour to discuss it with the case officer, because this is a condition that's not been agreed yet. Am I right?
Well, Nathan will answer that question.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But
Your question-
we'd like something more robust.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Luki. Councillor Bowring and then Councillor Todd.
I just want to understand a bit more about the amenity space, because Nathan was saying that it's not usable amenity space at the moment. And as I understand, this is all going to be open to the public. Is that right? And a previous objector said it wasn't going to be, I don't misrepresent, I believe said something along the lines of it wouldn't be quality amenity space, it would just be walk through. So I just wonder, briefly, because this is going on, if you could just give a general flavour and idea of the quality of the amenity space that will be available to all members of the public.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, it's privately owned land at the moment. It's non-publicly accessible. As far as we're aware, and you probably know better than us, but we don't think it's been accessible since before the school was built. So it's been a long time that it's not been accessible. So what we're providing is routes from Great West Road through the site to Gresham Road. So there is already, if you like, an amenity for anyone going to Osterley Station from Gresham Road without having to go along the Great West Road. So if nothing else, it's quieter. And this is not designed necessarily as a recreation ground or parks for the public to use. It's designed as gardens for the public to pass through. They're welcome to sit there if they want to. It is a publicly accessible space. But we're not suggesting this is some sort of big wreck that you can go and play five-a-side at. It is nice, high-quality landscape that residents, new residents, existing residents, any members of the public can pass through.
Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you very much. You've seen the earlier presentations. Sorry.
Yes.
Please pay attention. You said, and there was pictures of large articulated lorries. A mention of modular contribution. Could you clarify that and how you'll get them on site, please?
Yeah. So I think there's several points here. From a construction point of view, I think as one of the councillors mentioned, we wouldn't have progressed with the planning application unless we believe it's deliverable. So the way that the modular system works is if you can get the way we describe it, if you can get a juice and truck onto the site, you can get a modular unit onto the site. The modules are not articulated lorry size. We can make them smaller to suit the site conditions. So the tracking that's been done on the road will meet a certain requirement for the truck size. The modules are then sized to that truck. The amount of vehicles that access site during a modular construction is less than traditional. So even though it's coming on trucks for the modules, what you don't get is hundreds of small trade vans. So you don't get 5 plumbers turning up. You don't get lots of electricians. You don't get lots of deliveries from screw fix and juicing because we ran out of plasterboard. So there is huge amounts of data, and we're welcome to share it, that show that modular construction has less traffic than traditional construction. I think the point about managing it during the process and also post completion, the HCC obviously rent out their land to the van company, and they've obviously got some sort of agreement with how they manage the vans coming in and out, which is regular, and they seem to have managed that perfectly well. So there's no reason why we couldn't have those same conversations with the HCC and manage it in a similar way to how they're doing now with the vans that are on their site.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands. Thank you, gentlemen. Nathan, would you like to come back?
Yeah, there are a couple of points I would like to address before taking any further questions. So first point being that Councillor Siddiqui presented an image of a 13-meter articulated lorry. And it was just briefly touched on then about the size of the lorries, but the vehicle tracking diagrams we have showed a maximum size of 11 meters. So based on the information we have, it wouldn't be a 13-meter truck, and we would then again secure that through the condition process. The site allocation, it expects a minimum of 10 homes, which means that it expects to see a major development come forward on this scheme. And for the reasons I previously set out, I don't consider this to be an overdevelopment of the site. And Councillor Siddiqui also suggested that, Councillor Chowdhury also suggested that we hadn't paid significant attention to the very vulnerable children within the northern wing of Oakland School. There is a thorough equalities impact assessment in my addendum which addresses the potential impact on the vulnerable children within the school, and the developer has agreed to a variety of mitigation measures. In terms of the overlooking, you can see on the plan on the screen at the moment that only Block B would be able to see into the site, and there are only 2 secondary windows on each floor, coupled with the distance of 23.7 meters and the additional trees that were added on the site, where the officers are satisfied there'd be no harm to the privacy of the school.
Thank you, Nathan. Now it's open for debate. Councillor Reswilm. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a long meeting.
It
Covered
is.
a lot of ground. I think that's good. It's good to do these things thoroughly and in detail and interrogate everything. I think where I come down is this. It's policy compliant on just about every possible measure imaginable. People may not like height, but 4 stories is compliant with our policies in Hounslow. So I can't see any reason why you reject that. Personally, I don't have an issue with it anyway. You know, we're supposed to be building homes to address a housing crisis. You know, I think Councillor Strout alluded to this talking earlier. It's 56 homes on a site that delivers no benefit. A lot of people, I understand, don't see new homes near them as a benefit, but ultimately, overall, it is the planning system regards them as a benefit. They are a benefit, you know, and it's not a choice between this and some other imaginary scheme that doesn't exist. It's a choice between this scheme or no scheme, which means it's a choice between the affordable housing we get with this, the 10 social rent homes that we get with this, or no social rent homes. It's not this or some magic something else. I think that that's a benefit that's worth having. A lot of talk on community amenity. This is providing a huge amount of far exceeding policy requirements on community amenity. It looks good. I think we've had the landscaping points well addressed. You know, I think the private amenity space, you know, 86% of these are dual aspect. That's a very large percentage is dual aspect. The daylight sunlight figures are much higher than we're used to. I can't see anything within the parameters of which we are to make decisions that is actually wrong with what is being proposed in planning terms. And I think the homes are a good thing anyway. It's not open local amenity space. It hasn't been for years. It's a disused bit of concrete that people park on occasionally. That's not serving a benefit. This provides a benefit. I'm in favour of it. I won't move. I'll let others come in, but it's a benefit.
Thank you, Councillor William. Councillor Stouter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm echoing what Councillor Williams has said. To quote everybody, this is an underused or unused, neglected brownfield site, which are at an absolute premium in this borough. We need everyone we can get. The planning consultant on behalf of the residents said it's a site that had been slowly nibbled away. Well, it's been nibbled away to provide places for 184 children to be at a special needs school, and we're now going to provide 56 homes to help our really hard-pressed residents. If that's nibbling away at a site, find me some more and I'll nibble away at them if I can provide schools and housing for people. One thing that worries me about some of what we've heard, and for those who've been on the committee for a while, we've been here before. Objections to a site, and there's no real substance to the objection. It just seems that people want to use the site for something else. So we get lots of objections around the outside of it. And I can't put my finger on why people are objecting to this. The people north of the road claim it's an amenity site. It's an amenity site bordered by the Piccadilly Railway and the Great West Road and a school. Those living north of the road, instead of coming south and crossing the Great West Road, if they turn north, they've got the beautiful Ostley Park just by their door. If they want open green space, why go here? It's not a beautiful site. It's a site that's been neglected that can be turned into something that's going to help this borough. And I agree with Councillor Williams. What's going to happen, and this will be bad news, I'm afraid, for the objectors, there is nothing that suggests this site shouldn't be developed. And if we turn it down today as a committee, what will happen, I can guarantee you this will happen, The developer will object. It will go to appeal. We will lose that appeal as a council. This will be built. The difference is it will cost the council a lot of money because we will be duty bound to fight the objection because this committee approved it or objected to it rather. So we can approve it today and it'll cost the council no legal fees to fight an appeal, or we can reject it. It'll cost the council a bucket full of money, which we don't have, to fight the appeal, and it'll still be built. And I'm afraid, members of the committee, those of you who've looked at this and studied in detail, I would suggest that you should agree with my analysis and that of Councillor Williams.
I couldn't see any more hands. Is somebody proposing anything? Councillor Boring? Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what's been said. It's policy compliant in every area. In some areas, we haven't even talked really much about the sustainability, which is absolutely outstanding. It's got heat pumps, it's got solar panels, it's modular construction, and the amenity space, that the height's compliant. So yes, we should accept this. I just want to touch on one thing that Councillor Stroud-Turp said. He's absolutely right. If we refuse it, it will go to appeal and we'll lose, and it will cost not us, the taxpayer, a lot of money to defend it. But there's something actually, I think, arguably more important. The one issue about this site that I believe has legs is about the access for the construction. I think it's a very important issue. We're talking about a school, we're talking about a community centre. And the way to deal with that is the CLP and is the CEMP. If we approve this, we have control over that process. We can hold the developer to a very high standard. We can make sure that all of the construction traffic is taking due regard and more to the residents. If we refuse this and it goes to appeal, we lose control of all of that, and that would be a big mistake.
Thank you. Councillor Lal?
Yes, Chair. I also concur with some of the sentiments set out by my fellow councillors, and they've covered some of the points which I wanted to address. But my main concerns, if I should highlight them, have been briefly covered by Councillor Dan Bowring. But it was always to do with health and safety, access, and the traffic flow management and the construction. And as Councillor Bowring has already said, that we have in place, as far as the officer's presentation earlier was concerned in the report, measures that we can, as an authority, strongly hold the developers to ensure the construction traffic flow issues and parking issues are resolved amicably. And also within the report, we have a long-standing concern which will be partly addressed if it goes through, which is the CPZ for Gresham Road. So we've got monies towards the consultation, and it's up to the residents on Gresham Road whether they wish to go ahead with that proposal in due course. So that's something they're always arguing for, and they've got what they wanted. So they've got the option to decide on that. In terms of health and safety, again, I think it's absolutely paramount for all councillors here that is first and foremost the objective, because it is a sensitive site and it has those issues addressed to it. So I'm mindful of not taking too much time over it, but I think the objectives issues which were highlighted in the report and by the presentations, I think they have been well addressed by our officers. And I actually did mention earlier on that I asked when did our officers get hold of the ET planning objection, and it's amazing that they've managed to turn around a robust response addressing all the objections that were cited. And I think on balance, the council's position is sound, and it's a déjà vu moment again. I suspect that we may need to move ahead on planning reasons to possibly go ahead with this application.
We had very good questions and a nice debate on it. Somebody proposing anything? Yeah, Councillor Boring?
Yeah, I propose we approve with a condition that the split between the two-tier cycle parking and the Sheffield stands is removed from 50% to 75% in favour of the Sheffield stands.
Councillor Williams, are you seconding it? So it's been proposed and seconded. I'll take a, sorry. You want to add something on, Nathan? No? Okay. So I'll take a vote for approval first. In the favor of approval, yep. Yep, I'll do that as well. Count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep. Yeah. Sorry, against? Abstentions? 2 abstention. So with 11 in favor, 2 abstention, this application has been approved. Thank you for your contribution. And we would like to take 10 minutes break. Sorry. Right. Welcome back, councillors and the members of the public. Our next item is item 5, Reach Academy, Building 2937 MOD, Hemsworth Avenue, Feltham. Before you do, you want to speak now? Let the officer talk. Okay, right. Yeah, down to you.
Good evening, councillors and member of the pub.
You are interested in that? You want to declare some interest or? Yeah. Okay, we'll give you a chance.
Good evening, councillors and members of the public. I'd like to begin with a verbal addendum. Conditions 33 and 35, which relate to bird hazard management plan and pitch construction, are currently worded to be pre-commencement conditions. These are to be amended to prior to above ground works. And the approved plans and documents list has been updated to reflect a later version of the CLP construction logistics plan and active travel zone assessment received on the 16th of April and 22nd respectively, which address comments from the transport team, and this does not change the findings and recommendations of the case. The site, as you mentioned, is for the proposed development of Reach Academy Hanworth Park and is located at buildings 29 to 37 Elmwood Avenue. On your screen, you have an aerial image which shows the site in red, which would house the proposed school, and the site in blue, which is the existing Reach Academy of the High Street in Feltham. Just a bit on the site itself, it's approximately 2.1 hectares and located adjacent to the Feltham Town Centre. It currently forms part of the larger MOD site, Ministry of Defence, and is subject to the Feltham MOD Planning Brief 2017, which identified a wider development, which would include residential, business, communal space, community uses, and other supporting uses, including a new school. To the east of the site is Feltham High Street. The west is the remaining MOD site. To the south lies residential properties on Elmwood Avenue, and to the northeast of the site lies King's House, a residential building in use of flats. Also adjacent to the site is Feltham House, which is a Grade 2 listed building on the at-risk register, and to the southwest of the site is a number of commercial units with residential above, fronting the High Street, also known as Cavendish Terrace. The application site is partially located within a conservation area, Feltham Town Conservation Area, on its northern side. Moving on to the proposal. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing buildings on the MOD site and the erection of 3 school buildings and a multi-games use area, playing pitch, along with access, parking, landscaping, and associated infrastructure. The proposed school would be a 1,480 pupil all-through school, that's nursery through to 6th form, with 90 places in the nursery, 630 in primary school, 730 in the secondary school, of which 280 is at the 6th form, and 30 spaces for SEN, special needs education. It would provide 200 full-time jobs and is appropriately located in the town centre. The proposal contributes to an identified need for school places in the short term and long term based on current needs and projected future growth. The proposal would achieve a total on-site carbon reductions of 77% and an excellent BREEAM rating, both of which are secured via condition. The proposal would improve the ecological environment on-site, which is currently mainly made of hard standing. This includes a 170.88%, an 88% increase in hedgerows and a 95.89% increase in habitats. An urban greening factor assessment has also been undertaken and achieves a score greater than 0.4 as required by the guidance, overall corresponding to 10% BNG. In this application, highways and road safety was given much consideration throughout the entire proposal, given the road conditions on Browse Lane, which appeared on some photographs at the beginning of the slide, and taking into account the end users of development, who are 1,480 young people. The introduction of the highways works management and mitigation measures, it is considered that the applicant has demonstrated the highways risk of the scheme can be mitigated, and will continue discussions with TfL and LBH to realize these should the application before you be approved. The proposal represents a significant investment in the local community and would contribute to local education needs. It would allow the existing pupils at the Reach Academy to make use of the facilities, including the wider community. A pedestrian and cycle access through the site has been safeguarded to allow for the delivery of the future MOD. Taking into account all of these matters and subject to the recommendations of the conditions and planning obligations, my recommendation is to approve the application. Moving on to the highways works. Yep, that's just a breakdown of previous slide, Matt. Yep, that's just a breakdown of what's included within the highways works, and myself or Rob would be happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Ahmed. Questions for Ahmed? Councillor Bowring?
Is there going to be access to the school from Browse Lane?
Yes, there would be access to entering and exiting the site, both through the high street, through the existing reach, as well as the Browse Lane.
So obviously, it's excuse me, it's pretty dicey at the moment. The pavement's kind of problematic in places. Could you? I mean, I don't need great detail because we don't need to hear too much on it, but just a brief overview of what improvements they're going to do on Browse Lane and how that's going to make it safe for lots of kids, and which street is going to be a school street.
Yeah, so if you look at the plan on the screen, so that shows the new access into the site, and you'll see to the left of that is a wide area of new pavement that will allow people to congregate outside the site, outside the school. We're looking at putting a new raised zebra crossing in and raising the carriageway just to slow traffic. There's some widening of the footway on the opposite side of the school just to increase footway width there for the pupils to use and parents to use. That needs to be considered in conjunction with mitigation measures, mitigation proposed by the school, which will split the number of pupils entering Browse Lane and through the existing schools out into the high street. So it's just under 50% of the pupils from the new school enter out onto Browse Lane. But we'll, as the previous slide showed, we'll secure that through a management plan through the Section 106 agreement to make sure that that is monitored. As Ahmed said, road safety has been a really key consideration on Browse Lane. It's a busy road. So the school street, I'll just move on to School Street, we need to consult on that. We need to put together a bit more of a study and just to look at.
Is that
traffic.
on which street will be the school street?
Yeah, so it would be probably Browse Lane and probably Victoria Road as well, because there's two primary schools on Victoria Road, and what we wouldn't want to happen is for traffic to divert from Browse Lane onto Victoria Road. So we just need to do a bit of a study on that, and a separate consultation process anyway to do on that.
Great. And in the previous, which showing the improvements, what was the shaded blue area?
So the plan there shows a raised zebra crossing, but what we actually think would be better is to extend that raised area across the junction, just to slow traffic.
Yep. Yeah, go on. You want to speak? No, yeah.
Sorry, could you say which junction that is?
Yes, Councillor, sorry, it's the access into the school, and obviously there's an access opposite into the business opposite as well. So it would cover those two accesses. This is on Browse Lane. Yeah.
Councillor Luki?
Thank you, Chair. Look, having failed on the Nishkan school travel plan and the and access there 5 years on, how are we going to make sure that you get this right from day one? You know, we continue to be browbeaten by an academy school, got their own way of doing things. They do not adhere to their planning conditions on school travel plans. It takes up councillors' time, it takes up residents' time, takes up officers' time, because at the start and at the planning application there, and I know you perhaps browbeaten on this 7 years ago, and permission was given, but anybody who was at that committee that time and now looks at the place, they know that they were sold a pig in a poke. So how are we going to make sure parents, and this isn't all through school, just like the other one, it's not got nursery school. Well, you've got a nursery school. We haven't got one, fortunately. But how are we going to prevent a repetition of the mistakes made in Osterley when that school was approved? How are we going to make sure this doesn't happen here? When are you going to introduce this? Rather than putting the cart before the horse.
So in this application, the site is in town centre location, so highly accessible by public transport, and we expect most parents and pupils to arrive by sustainable modes, whether that's by public transport or walking or cycling. This Section 106 agreement will clearly set out. There'll be a school travel plan, but also a school management plan, and that will clearly set out how we expect the school to operate, so that in particular road safety on Browells Lane is maintained. That's been our key consideration. So we've secured access through the existing school onto the high street. Part of the management plan, we expect that the two schools will have different start and end times, so the pupils for each of the schools will arrive and depart at different times. So the Section 106 agreement will set out clearly how that will be monitored, and that if there are any issues occurring on Browells Lane with road safety, that we expect the school to mitigate that through how they manage their arrivals and departures.
Chair, how many school children are going to be brought to school by car? Yeah, at Nishcam, you said it would be 15% back in the day, and now it's still about 70%. How are you going to assure the residents of Feltham? I know it's got, I know you can get a bus there from Isleworth, but how are you going to assure us that we're not going to end up with the same sort of problems around Elmwood Avenue, around Rochester Avenue, all the other places around there, clogging up the streets to bring their kids to school? Because as you know, they don't give a monkeys about a school travel plan down my way.
So we work with the school on this, and the school share our concerns about road safety. We've also worked with TfL to look at impact of additional car trips, and that assessment was included in the transport assessment. So there's some traffic modelling done as part of that assessment, and we've secured additional. TfL have required an additional contribution for additional bus services and for amendment to traffic signals at the junction of Browells Lane and the Tesco junction to improve traffic flow. The assessment that we've had is that the current parents park, or majority of parents park. We know that parents park in the Tesco car park opposite, and we know that parents at local schools also park in the Leisure West car park. So whilst those are informal measures, the measures that we're proposing to implement, including red lines and school streets on Browells Lane and round onto the high street, will mitigate any issues with drop-off on street, because that can be enforced.
Chair, it's not okay, but I'll accept the officer's response.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Port. Yeah.
Yeah, add some more questions, because it's not quite clear to me whereabouts we are. What I'm concerned about is that the school buildings and the main access, is that going to be from the high street, or is it going to be in Browells Lane, and that we're going to, we're not dropping people off on the high street?
So the high street has obviously parking waiting restrictions at the moment. Sorry, the high street obviously has parking and waiting restrictions at the moment. So there's double lines. I think the proposal will include upgrading those to double red lines, which would enable us to enforce no stopping on the high street. The main school entrance is on Browse Lane, but the split of pupils will be. Yes. So the new school building will have its main access, vehicle access. The parking will be accessed from Browse Lane, but there will be access through the existing school. There's a route through the existing school from the high street, and the pupils will be split between the two accesses to reduce the impact on Browse Lane.
Yeah, you lost me here somewhere. The new school buildings, there's 3, was there? I see, yeah, 3 new school buildings. Are these new schools, or are they part and parcel of the school that's in the high street?
So they are run by the same trust at present, and that's the plan too. However, the school has been designed so it could independently be run by another trust, and as such, there is a security and fencing strategy between it. As Rob said, the plan is that the main vehicular access for delivery, servicing, etc., is off Browse Lane. A number of pupils will use Browse Lane, and some will use the high street. I'd also like to add, it's anticipated that at some point in time in the lifetime of this school, that the wider MOD site will come forward, and that in itself will add more potential accesses and entrances to the school and more pressure relief valves.
Sorry, I misunderstood here. I thought the MOD site was all coming forward, all of it.
This 2.1 hectare parcel for this proposed school has come forward at this stage in time, and that's what's before us. It's anticipated that the rest of the site will come forward at some point in time.
I don't think you would probably know, but the access to that land, the MOD land, was first discussed in the 1970s for schools. So I've been hanging around waiting for it to actually happen.
Thank you, Councillor Stout.
Yeah, I'm glad Councillor Foote asked that, because that reassures me I'm not the only one who didn't understand. There's the Reach Academy already on the main road, yep. And this planning application is on behalf of the Reach Academy, and the papers say it's going to have 1,480 children spread across reception to sixth form. Mm-hmm. Does that 1,480 include those who currently attend the present Reach Academy, or are we adding another almost 1,500 pupils to the existing school? And if we are, what is then the total pupil uptake on that site? Because it sounds to me it's going to be heading north of 2,000 or worse, or better. It's good to have big schools, but I'm confused about whether we're adding to, separate to. I know you said a separate trust, but I'm not clear. Sorry.
To clarify, Councillor, there is an existing school, Reach Academy, which is around 900 pupils. This proposal before you is for a new school for 1,480 pupils. There will be 2 schools on the site, should this application be granted, that has over 2,000 pupils. As Rob mentioned earlier on, one of the requirements is a school management plan, which will take into account starting times for both the schools, staggering the exiting and entrances for the schools. So for us, in our assessment, it has been on the table, and one of the things we've secured is an access through that existing reach in order to address our road safety concerns at London Borough of Hounslow.
Okay, because I know that the current Reach Academy is not overly blessed with sporting facilities. Will they then get use of the facility? You probably don't know, but it strikes me that it's sort of 1 at one stage and 2 at another stage, and how much of it's joint?
No, you're correct. The existing school, Reach Academy, has limited facilities. The pupils there would be able to make use of the provision at this proposed school as well as the wider community.
Okay, so in essence, just for absolute clarity, what we're saying is that we're going to have a school on this site which is going to cover reception to sixth form, which is going to have somewhere close to 2,500 students on this educational site, split between the 900 and something currently at Reach and the 1,480 going to the new. It does make a, I don't know if it makes a material planning consideration, but at least it gives us a clue as to what it is that the magnitude of what you're asking us for approval for.
So yes, there will be 2 schools next to each other, which will have a cumulative pupil number of over 2,000. That has been considered throughout the development, the planning process. And the existing pupils, as I mentioned, would be able to make use of the facilities at the school adjacent to them that they lack at theirs.
All right.
I just wanted to know that I've seen somewhere here that quite a few trees will be removed. So are you going to replace them or completely removed,
So yes, we've assessed the arboricultural impact assessment methods and the preliminary assessments provided by the applicant. There are some trees removed. It is only the trees are absolutely required for the development to take place. And there is an uplift in the amount of trees. As I mentioned before earlier on, this is a site dominated at present by hard standing. We're going to get a comprehensive landscaping strategy, which includes an uplift in hedgerows, trees, and the application is going to meet 10% biodiversity net gain.
Councillor Luki?
Sorry, just going back, and I promise I won't mention this camp. Oops, sorry, I did. But who's going to have ownership of these plans and strategies? Is it just one? Will there be just one for this new school, or will there be a new overarching school travel plan for both facilities, and anything else so anything else that they're responsible for, ecological plans and all the other things that go with the planning application. Who's going to be responsible for all that? Or are they going to be arguing amongst themselves, or you go and approach them for one thing and they say, no, not me, Gov, it's somebody else, it's the other ones. So how are we going to be able to consolidate all necessity on this for this development, for these 2 sites put together, very well joined at the hip here, I would say.
So I think, as with any planning application, the obligations would rest with the applicant in this case, which is the new school. So that's where they would sit within the Section 106 agreement for the new school. There is obviously a link between the 2, but from my perspective, it's clear that the obligations rest with the new school. As we've said, we've assessed that the impact of the 2 schools should not, or the new school should not add to the current travel for the existing school. So there is staggered times between the 2 schools and different opening times between the schools, but that will rest within the Section 106 agreement for the new school.
Sorry, but that is one school relying on the other school as well, isn't it? A relationship on school opening times and access to parking, parents parking, whether it's at the cinema or at Tesco's or anywhere else. How are we going to monitor and manage these two potentially monoliths joining together and making a big Power Ranger?
As I say, that the Section 106 obligations will make it clear that we expect the new school to have separate, different opening times and operating times to the existing school. If the existing school changes whilst it's in the same trust, I would expect them to work together. If the existing school changes their opening and closing times, then the new school would have an obligation to review theirs.
Right.
Good luck.
Councillor Long?
Chair, a couple of questions. So do we have any other sites across London Borough of Hounslow where we have two major schools located right next to each other with two senior management teams, two separate operating structures. It just sounds like madness to me. I mean, if it's not relevant planning decision, then you can strike me down on the legal side of things. But you know, I don't understand why would you need two major schools on one single site with two management systems? Is there something like this operating already in our borough?
No, there isn't. Again, to recap a point I made earlier on, policy steers these kind of schools to town centre locations and where there is identified need. In this case, there is both. It's within a town centre and it's in an area where we have a current need and a future projected need. The planning brief for the Feltham site also identified the overall site as being able to provide community uses, business uses, housing, and a new school.
Okay, I mean, I was going through the report. Can you just give me some evidence about the future needs of school provision? Because I was always under the impression that there was a declining school roll. Now, all of a sudden, I don't know what they're doing in Feltham, or maybe, but it's contrary to the trend at the moment.
Absolutely. So on the SEN provision, there's a requirement for a resource centre by 2030 for 30 pupils. With this school, we would be able to have that live by 2026. Without this provision, the council incurs costs of sending these kids out of the borough, as we don't currently have this provision in-house. Moving on to housing trajectory, our data for the Feltham and Hanworth planning area shows a 16% growth over the 10-year period from 2026 to 2036, showing that, and the Wester Borough plan shows that we have approximately 6,000 homes feeding into that future projection. The reception year group in that 2026 to 2036 period is set to grow by 20%. And in particular, the Hanworth Park ward will have around 1,890 units, including potentially 1,370 from the Ministry of Defence site itself. In terms of capacities of nearby schools, the two closest schools to this site, not factoring in Reach Academy, is Spring West and Rivers Academy, both of which are currently being asked to increase the spaces at their school to provide spaces for kids in the borough.
Okay. Councillor Boring.
Chair, just a quick point of information, because I had the same questions Councillor Lau had. So I called someone from admissions, a senior officer, and they said exactly the same thing. And also that a lot of the new housing growth is going to come from the MOD site, which means you've got a lot of pupils will be very close to that site. And also that this land is available now for the school as part of the MOD site. And if we don't move now to get it, we lose it. Her essential analysis was, we need it now.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands. Do you want to come back? Are you okay? Okay, it's open for debate. Anybody? Councillor Williams?
I think the 30 send places has just been highlighted is massive for the borough, really welcome, really important, as is having school places for children who need to go to school. I can't see any issue with this. I would like to, because it's never been said before. I think Councillor Luca has a point, actually a good one on this whole. I hope that. Yeah, has a point, and that I do hope that these plans are going to at least refer to the existing one and the other ones, and that there's going to be some. I mean, I don't know how schools are going to open at different times. So my understanding is kids go to school at 8:30 and they leave at 3:30. That doesn't sound like staggered open. They're going to be at school at the same time. I just some of this obviously will need some reassurance that this works, but obviously I'm fully in favour of expanding education provision in the borough. So I'm obviously thrilled to hear we're getting the same places in particular, but all places. So that's good.
Yeah, Councillor Boring.
Sorry, I was scratching my beard.
Councillor Stouter.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Williams. Every time we bring a development forward for housing, we're inevitably asked, where are the school places? well, they're here. We want to keep building houses. We want to get more of our families into a house, and we've got to provide those families with schools. I mean, it's not a perfect solution. It's a great big school on a site that's already quite crowded, but spookily enough, it's where a lot of families are going to be living. So I would rather hope that most families will choose to walk there. The older children will walk there by themselves. If they try to drive to that site, from my experience of attending meetings at that site, good luck. They'll soon work out that driving is not an option, and they'll revert to public transport or walking, or dare I suggest for the older ones, cycling.
Councillor Lukey, I'll come back.
I'm not against this. I'm really not against it. But I've just, I've watched this going on locally for a long time, and people will drive, Councillor Stroud. People will drive, and they will probably drive distances. Academies just generally, as I know from our two local academies, they generally don't, they don't have a limited catchment area. People will come from distance, and particularly if it's also children with special educational needs, and we know that, and they will come from distance. They might even want to sell some services to Spelthorne or to Richmond, for example. I don't know, but people will drive, and if you don't have a robust one, Robert knows this. Robert knows this. If we don't know, I haven't been told the percentage of how many people are going to come by car, but we were hoodwinked with the other application. There is a shorter word for hoodwinked, but we were hoodwinked for the last application. So I'd like it minuted, Bill. We don't often ask this, but I'd like it minuted that I will support this, but with great reservation on getting there, on great reservation on what's likely to be, unless officers can prove me differently, a substandard school travel plan.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Foot.
Yeah, I'm concerned, Chair, because I've watched this. There's two senior schools in that area that have been demolished over the time. I went to one. The other one was for females. We had a male school, a boys' school, and a girls' school. They were both demolished. Well, I think one's demolished and the other one's being used for something entirely different. It's not a school. It's not even a college. It's nothing. It's nothing to do with education. Anyway, but we've seen this happen there. The number of people that will be going into this south part of Feltham and the north part of Hamworth is going to be on the increase, and we're going to need more facilities, not less, because there's definitely going to be a big growth in the population in the west of Feltham and the north of Hamworth.
Thank you. Councillor Boring, you want to say something? Or somebody proposing anything?
I propose we approve.
Anybody seconding? Okay, proposed, seconded. I'll take a vote for the approval. Take a vote.
It's unanimous.
Okay, nobody against, no abstentions. So it's unanimously approved. Thank you. Right. Not running now. No. Next item is item 6, Arnold Hawker's House, Central Way, Feltham.
Chair, just quickly, Councillor Butt is
okay.
giving.
I just told her. Yeah. Okay. Pages 131 to 161. And who's taking this? Okay, Matthew, down to you. All right. Yeah, sure.
Evening, Chair, members. I'll try and keep this fairly brief if I can, just because it's been a long evening. So this is Arnold Hawker House. Sorry, just before I do proceed, I do have a verbal addendum item, just a very brief one, which is that the biodiversity net gain section in my addendum at paragraph 7.99, the correct habitat gain unit gain score is 163.15 and not 100% as I was shown. So just to clarify that. So the site is a 357 square metre plot located in the North Feltham Trading Estate, the corner of Central Way and Pier Road. The site currently contains, it contains a 3-storey brick building, commercial use as office and commercial space towards the front of the site on Central Way with an attached single-storey warehouse at the back. The cumulative footprint is 935 square metres approximately. There's a large area of hard standing to the east of the site, which is used for storage of vehicles at the moment. The buildings are currently a fairly poor quality. They're not fit for modern industrial purposes. The site is currently being operated under Class EG and B8 industrial use class, a flexible one, with some ancillary office floor space. So the site is a non-allocated site. It's in an industrial area. The nearest residential homes are over 250 metres away on Millway, south of Duke of Northumberland River. The site lies within a protected industrial area, which is designated as one of the borough's 2 preferred industrial locations and one of the borough's 3 strategic industrial locations. Yeah, there's an industrial character there. The site has industrial and landfill history. It also lies within an advertisement and special control area. The site has a PTEL of 2, which is a poor public transport access indicator, and it's located within a CPZ. Access is currently via 4 vehicular crossovers, 2 along the Central Way southwest corner and 2 on Pier Road. The northernmost access is currently shared with Frontier House, which is a site to the north of the application site. There are 4 current official parking bays on the site, but obviously I think within historic street view, I've observed a fair few more informal bays being used at the site over the years. There's a strip of grass verge to the front of the site on Central Way, which has a number of non-native hedges, but it also has a grass verge which has been described by the applicant as species-rich grassland, and it's been reported that a grey wagtail has been spotted there, which is a London priority species. However, there's very little in the way of greening or biodiversity elsewhere on the site. So the proposal itself, it's to demolish the existing structures on the site, level the site, and erect a 12.5 metre high flexible warehouse building with ancillary office space at mezzanine floor and first floor. It will be operated under a hybrid Class EG, B2 and B8 industrial use. The final use would depend on the end user once it's been established. The intention is to kind of keep it as flexible as possible to market it at a range of future users. The design would be a steel-framed standard pitched roof structure, total footprint 1,154 square metres. So that's a modest uplift of 216 square metres on the existing situation. However, it would be designed to a very high standard for modern industrial standards. It would be meeting net zero carbon standards through use of 200 square metres of PV panels on the roof. And it would also achieve BREEAM excellent standards, so it would be a highly sustainable scheme. No advertisement is proposed at this stage. This would need to be secured at a later stage through advertisement consent applications. So yeah, that would be a way of limiting that. In transport terms, the application would maintain the existing accesses on Pier Road. It would merge the 2 existing accesses on Central Way into one. And it would improve the pedestrian environment, which would all be secured through a legal agreement, Section 278 agreement. HGV access, parking and circulation space would all be accommodated on the site within 3, and there'd be 3 3 roller shutter doors basically in the elevations. There'll be 10 car parking spaces on the site, which is a reduction on the 16 originally proposed, so that's welcomed. 4 of these will be active electric vehicle charging bays, 6 will be passive, 2 blue badge spaces, cycle parking, 6 spaces inside, 6 spaces outside, and a cargo bay as well. Waste and recycling would all be undertaken on the site, so it wouldn't affect the street. And in terms of landscaping, last but not least, so following some amended plans from the applicant, the scheme is delivering quite high quality extensive landscaping, including a translocated and restored species-rich wildflower grassland to the front of the site. There'll be at least 4 trees planted as well, chosen for their amenity value and resilience to climate change. 3 mixed native double staggered hedges along the site boundary, species-rich green roof cycle store, and climber vegetation on the south elevation of the building. There would also be 4 concrete planters as well to prevent unofficial car parking on the in the forecourt. And then some lower level planting as well. The urban greening factor would be approximately 0.12. There's no requirement for industrial units of this kind to deliver an urban greening factor. So, however, they have provided that notwithstanding. And there will be a significant biodiversity net gain of 163% habitat increase and 2,000% hedgerow gain. So overall, the proposal will replace poor quality existing buildings, provide high quality flexible warehouse space, an uplift of industrial floor space, which is greatly needed in the borough, and it would provide additional jobs, albeit the final numbers not confirmed and would depend on the end user. The Section 106 would secure a variety of planning obligations, standard ones, including highway works and a travel plan. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, members' questions. Yeah, Councillor Boring.
I've got a question on cycle parking. In the report, it refers to 16 spaces. If you could just comment if that's policy compliant, and also it referred to the cycle storage as hoops, which is not a term I'm familiar with. It sounds like a Sheffield stands, but could you clarify what hoops are?
I think the report doesn't specifically refer to Sheffield stands, but that is what is implied. Cycle hoops, Sheffield stands, it's just not the technical name that's been within the report. But I should mention as well that there is a condition listed for full details of cycle parking, which will have to be approved by us prior to occupation of the site.
I hope you'll have Sheffield stands or similar. And just that number of 16, is that?
Yes, that's a policy compliant number.
There's also plenty of space on the site to accommodate it, so the condition should, will secure the relevant stands.
Right. Any more contributions? Yeah. Anybody proposing anything? Councillor Todd? Okay. It's been proposed and seconded. I'll take a vote for approval. Nobody against.
Unanimous.
No.
10 to approve, none against, no abstentions.
Okay, it's been approved unanimously. Thank you for your contributions. Item 7, we all seen that, and we had an email from Matthew explaining the reason because his IT is not up to date yet. Yeah. Okay.
Chair, just on that IT thing,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just this item that Matthew Rees has raised with us. But it's a system. We were hoping for something better. We were waiting. Those of us will remember. I've waited at least 10 years for this, but it's not working. It's not working fully as we expected. Yeah, we've been sold again. We've been sold a pup, I think, because at times that it's down, the number of times that it's down, the difficulty to access information from time to time. Even officers can't do that. They're pursuing enforcement when permission's been granted. So I was 2 months previous. So I'd like I'd really like a proper explanation on why why our planning system, because it's public facing as well, and I'll get fed up with my residents contacting me and telling me it's down again, and I have to write to Mr. Lumley. Yeah, Mr. Lacavara about this.
Thank you, Councillor Lukey. So yeah, as you know, we went live with the new planning and building control IT system in May, after many years of preparation. There have been some issues with aspects of it. I think Councillor Todd has raised issues around the building control property searches. That issue's been resolved. There are other issues. We're in the process of resolving them. And, over time, it will be a significant enhancement on what we had previously. And some of it already is. But I think we're always expecting there would be some things that wouldn't work perfectly straight away. We appreciate the feedback. Any issues that residents and councillors have with the system, please let us know so we can raise them as a supplier, get them fixed, and move towards make sure it's an enhancement all had previously.
Chair, I had 2 questions at the area forum last week, separately. If you can find a way to get back to the residents' organisations that you consulted previously, because they feel that they're being ignored. So even if you just write to them and tell them, or call them in and ask them how it's going so far, that will go a long way to satisfy people. So if you can do that, if you can minute that, Bill, you were there at our area forum, weren't you? Yeah.
I was councillor.
Yeah, exactly,
That will be
exactly. So if you can do that, that would be very helpful. It will be a win, I would say.
Just on that, yeah. So when we met the residents' associations prior to going live, and we undertook to having another follow-up meeting with them once we had gone live. You're right, we haven't done that yet, but we have promised to do that, and we will set that up as soon as possible. But in the meantime, yeah, we'll send them we'll email out and communicate with them about where we are with things.
Promise them a meeting.
Thank you. It's been minuted as well. Okay. Item 8, I've got no other request. Number 9 is the next meeting is 7th of November. Thank you for your contributions. And it's 7 minutes past 10. Meeting closed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.